First dungeon Ointera began to sweat. His boss was not going to tell him he had to go in there, right? Boss? Desiree finally turned to look at Ointera and gave him a wide, scaly grin. We are going in since we need to figure out what level dungeon it is. From the surrounding area, I'd say it is around level on-ish. We will be okay as long as we take our time. After all, we need to level up, and if this works like the dungeons I know of, then we can do this one dungeon over and over until we all reach the proper level. Plus, we need to kill elite mobs. Elites only appear in dungeons or around them, but I do not see any elites here now, do you? Ointera wanted to argue, but he could find no fault in anything his boss said. He sighed and looked at the dungeon, which still sent shivers down his spine. He then took a deep breath before slowly letting it out. He held up his spear and said, "T then, let's do it." Good. Remember though, we are checking first. Do not attack anything unless you are attacked first. If they are around the level range I stated, then we will try to pull one at a time. I will be the main tank. I will need you all to keep me healed with first aid, just like we practiced. Desiree had already trained them on teamwork. Each one of them knew how to play their roles quite well. She was the main tank, and the rest were DPS. Ointera was their main healer since she, for some reason, had a bigger mana pool than the others. Understood. Everyone replied in unison. Desiree was their boss, so even if they were a little reluctant, they would still follow her orders. Desiree nodded before taking a deep breath and pushing the door to the dungeon open. She felt as if she passed through some kind of thick film as she stepped into the dungeon. At the same time, a notification appeared above her head. Discovered the secluded cave experience points gained. Seeing that she got experience points just for entering the cave made Desiree happy. She quickly looked around to see that she was now in a dimly lit mossy cave. There were torches lining the walls, which would never be possible if there was not some kind of special trick to this entire place. The pigmen all stood behind her with their weapons at the ready. Each one was very nervous, except Desiree, who was trying to analyze everything. We need to go slow. We do not know if these dungeons have traps or not. Desiree was trying to take everything into consideration. As long as they were not caught in a monster trap with hundreds of monsters or hit by any of the traps themselves, they should be able to clear the dungeon. She did hope to maybe find some drops if drops were a thing in dungeons. Taking a deep breath, Desiree decided it was now time to move. She slowly made her way forward. To be safe, she would test the area in front of her with rocks from the cave floor. She did not know if anything was able to sense movement or not. The first area seemed like a safety zone. There were no monsters in sight. But when they came to a passage that narrowed out leading to the next area, Desiree went fully on guard. The passage was not long and was only 2 Desiree wide. They slowly made their way down until they came to the exit that opened up to the next room. This is where Desiree came to a full halt. She motioned to her companions to stay quiet and stay there before looking around and whispering over and over again. She was able to pick up 3 sources that were monsters. Iliate, Night Snake level, 8 monster rank, E elemental affinity, dark HP, 600 MP. 100 Desiree snorted in annoyance. The damn snake had more health than her. But she was lucky it was an elite. This meant she could easily clear one of her evolution requirements. She slowly backed up, forcing the pigmen to follow suit before sitting down in the cave. From what I can tell, there are 3 level 8 elite snakes called night snakes. They are ranky monsters. Their health is at 600 HP, and their mana is at 100 MP. I have no idea about their defenses, or anything like that, but they are aligned with the dark element. The elemental affinity was something new, thanks to her leveling up appraisal. It helped a lot to understand the alignment of the monsters you are killing, since this can help take advantage of a weakness. All elements had opposing sides, after all. Although, the fact that it took longer to get good at certain spells did not help if you were not aligned with them either. So, it made things much more difficult to go around casting every type of element as if you were a god. But Desiree did plan to slowly get used to the other elements as time went on, but would keep her current ice element as her main element. Since none of us are of the light element, we will have a bit of a tougher fight. I will try to lure one over to kill. But be ready for 2 or 3. We will use the narrow passage to our advantage if we get more than one. I will try to keep them both on me, though. Since their plan was set, Desiree moved back into the room. Her first target was the elite night snake to the right, since it was farthest away from the others. Era and the other pigmen all waited at the designated spot where they would fight. Although the room was rather dark, Desiree's dragon eyes could easily see what was going on around her. Sadly, it was only her that could see well. The pigmen still had a hard time seeing into the darker sections of the cave. But even for Desiree, who could see well in the dark, seeing the black night snakes in the darkness was no easy feat, which was why she used appraisal to find out what was around. She quickly and quietly made her way over to the lone night snake and raised her claws. Ice arrow. A blue and white ball of ice formed in front of her hand, before slowly extending out into the shape of an arrow and flying forward. It flew through the cave silently until it smashed into the side of the head of the night snake. The night snake turned its head with narrowed eyes as it hissed and looked at Desiree. It did not hesitate in the slightest to chase after the blue thing that just smacked it with some kind of rock. Desiree, on the other hand, was already backpedaling, but not too fast, since she did not want to lose aggro if it was even possible to do so. But since things were more and more like a game by the second, she couldn't help but feel like it was. She was also keeping an eye on the other night snakes. Luckily, there was no movement as of yet. From the information she was seeing, she had done 30 points of damage from that one attack and used 5 MP to cast the spell. This left her with 415 MP. She would need to attack it 90 more times to kill it. She could easily do that while killing the night snake, but that would not give her companions the experience they need to fight elites. Now that she had those who were fighting at her side and were part of her team, she could not just do everything herself. She did not wish to fight alone either. While it might make her seem more powerful, what would happen if she was alone and accidentally pulled 3 or 4 monsters at a time? She would definitely end up dead if she could not run away. Having Ointera and the others helping her as she made her way toward her goal was very important. She had to fight as a team in order to defeat monsters safely. The night snake began picking up speed as it rushed toward Desiree. Its body slithered back and forth in between the rocks, protruding out of the cave floor. Desiree finally turned around to start running normally. She raised her paw and extended one finger towards Ointera to indicate that only one monster was incoming. Ointera and his kin were nervous, but also determined. They wanted to be of help to their boss, who had done so much to help them grow stronger. They were taking steps to become the first pigmen to evolve. There had never been any record of a pigman who had evolved before, so this was the first time. Attack once our boss reaches us. Remember what she said. We will fight near the entrance to stay away from other mobs, and to also allow us a quick escape if need be. If you get hurt, quickly cast first aid on yourself and back up until you are ready to fight again. If someone ends up dying, do not lose your cool. Keep fighting in formation. Our job is to keep attacking and reduce its HP until it hits 0. Ointera called out his orders, making his companions all nod. Their eyes went from being nervous to looking very serious. It seemed they did not want to fail on the first monster. As soon as Desiree arrived at the group, she skidded to a halt, turned around, and blasted a few more ice arrows at the night snake. She had to keep its attention on her. Ointera and the rest did not have high HP, nor did they have much defense, but she did. The night snake was enraged once more after being hit so many times. It darted at Desiree, ignoring the little piggies at its side. Little did it realize that this was going to be a fatal mistake. While the night snake was focused on trying to kill the one who kept hitting it in the head with frozen rocks, the pigmen flanked it from both sides and then began stabbing it with their stone spears. The night snake's HP was quickly falling. Desiree was launching ice arrows at it, and when it attacked her, she would dodge, and then attack it with her own claws, leaving large gashes on its head. No matter how much damage the pigmen were doing, her damage was just that much higher. You defeated Elite Night Snake. Experience points gained. Desiree smiled as she walked over to the night snake and sent it into her inventory. But when she did this, she was surprised to see that, instead of white names, the items had green names. Oh, a higher quality? Is it because it is an elite? Although she was curious, something caught her eye, drawing her attention. A few shiny objects were lying on the ground where the night snake once was. This is? Desiree asked as she looked at the shiny circular objects on the ground. While she was asking what it was, she pretty much already knew what it was. Gold coins. They are the currency of our world. They can be used all over the world no matter the race, which makes trade much easier, Ointera explained. I see, so we can just save them then. Desiree sighed and put the shiny coins in her inventory. They did not take up a slot, but instead the 0 she had at the bottom suddenly shot up, showing she now had 10 gold. Slowly and steadily, Desiree and her group made their way through the dungeon. Desiree's level shot up 2 times, making her level 13. Name: Desiree Harris. Race: Ice Draggling. Age: 14. Level: 13. Monster rank: F. Evolution requirements: reach level 20. HP: 860, 860, 880. 580. Elemental affinity: Ice immunity. LVM max. Appraisal 2. First aid: O222 Spark. Leer 2 Tlon Cleanse. LL1 Drink 1 Take. Drink. VL1. Professions: weapon crafting. AVL2 armor crafting. Even the elite requirement on her evolution requirements had disappeared. She found elite monsters, even ones of a lower level, were good experience. While they might have more HP and MP as well as hitting harder, they were still easy to pull and could easily be defeated through teamwork with her as the tank. They knew first aid would not heal all that much to begin with, so any time they saw Desiree's health bar drop to 70%, they would heal her almost as if they were scripted robots. I think that is it. Desiree pursed her lips. Did we miss a turn? She could have sworn they checked the entire dungeon. Boss, from what I know, dungeon boss rooms only appear when the whole dungeon is clear of monsters. If this was truly the last monster, then we need to look around for the door, Ointera explained. Alright then, let's backtrack. Follow the map, and when we find the boss room, mark it down. Desiree still had someone map out the dungeon. By having this map, they could run this dungeon a few times. Ointera said dungeons reset every 24 hours, so they could scout around for a day, and then the day after do the dungeon again to get everyone's levels up. She was actually hoping to find a higher level dungeon as well. She had gotten a lot of gold and green crafting materials. She hoped to make some new armor when she got back to her base camp. One thing she was really excited about was the tin and copper she had been farming as well. She had enough to make a few weapons for all of them. Stone spears and stone daggers did not work all that well and would chip. If it was not for the fact that she had made a few tips for each spear and dagger that she had crafted, some of the pigmen would have long been left without a weapon. With no other choice, the group backtracked through the dungeon until they finally found a door on the side wall of the second room of the dungeon. The door was nothing out of the ordinary, from what Desiree would expect from a dungeon boss room door. Large arched double doors with monsters and symbols engraved throughout. Well, according to the rules of dungeons that I know of, the boss should be a snake since that is basically all we have been fighting. Desiree hoped the boss would not be too hard. She had to think of the safety of everyone, including herself. According to what I know, this is correct, Ointera replied. Okay, then let's stop and see what skills we can get. Ointera, you said a few magic spells had shown up, correct? Desiree knew magic would be best to quickly take a boss down unless it had some kind of high magic resistance. Yes, all of us have access to Fireball and Rock Arrow, Ointera answered. Then use your points on that, and then upgrade any combat skills you have. At the start of the fight, let me battle the boss for a few minutes to get enough damage ramped up on it. Ointera and the rest were all level 9 now. Ointera was almost level 10. They had all leveled up quickly, but that leveling was starting to slow. While the pigmen were excitedly getting their first true attack spells, Desiree began going through her list, looking for something for her to buy. She kept scrolling through her list until she spotted something interesting. Healing Snow? Healing Snow element ice heals everyone within 32 feet for 100 points. Mana cost 20 an ice healing spell. Desiree smiled. It was not even a single cast spell, but an AOA, area of effect, healing spell. Cost 10 skill points as well. This meant she could cast this spell when she saw people getting low, with no way of healing themselves. She took a deep breath. Alright, I will spend 10 points on this, and try to up a few more skills. In the end, Desiree could only level up one skill, and that was the skill she had just purchased, Healing Snow. The healing, along with her affinity, went up to 250 HP per cast. Name, Desiree Harris Race, I struggling age, 14 level, 13 monster rank. F evolution requirements, reach level 20 HP, 860, 868, 58, Otis, 800. Oh, Ease immunity, IVL max, Appraisal, first aid, AL2 first 2FR, 2AATAO2, Pale Spark, 1 clowns, AL1 drink, OAL1 dick, BAL1. Dice Arrowville 2, Futureball 1, Detection, Furball 1 are detects. Healing Snow, ELA2. She just needed to watch her mana closely. Because if she used her new healing spell too many times, it would drain her MP fast. Desiree looked over at the others and asked, Ready? Boss, no matter what happens, we will follow you. Ointera had gained a lot of confidence since they started the dungeon. The same went for his companions. They each learn how to kill elite monsters. This was something that only those privileged enough to cast magic could do, and now they were in this class of magic users. Then let's do this. Desiree pushed open the door and walked in with Ointera, and the rest following closely behind. The room was dark, which was normal for any dungeon boss room that Desiree had gone into. They had only taken a few steps into the boss room when the sound of clapping was suddenly heard. Good job. And welcome. The entire room suddenly lit up, as if it was the light of day, causing everyone to shield their eyes. As they slowly adjusted to the new brightness, they saw a man in a black cloak standing not too far away. Desiree narrowed her eyes as she looked at the man. She could only see the outline of his chin since he had his head slightly lowered, but she felt like she might know this person, although she is not sure who it was, or why she felt like this. The cloaked man's eyes flashed as he looked at Desiree before clapping his hands once more. I cannot tell you who I am, but I can say this. To be the first on a world that has just been turned to complete a dungeon shows that you all have promise. Although, to see pigmen from the boundary world here is very promising. The cloaked man sat down on a stone block that rose up from the floor and crossed one leg over the other as he held his hands in his lap. Please take a seat. I believe you all are wondering why things are the way they are. Am I correct? Desiree looked at the cloaked man with caution. Do I know you? Desiree's question made the cloaked man's eyes flash once more. He couldn't help but let out a sigh before saying, I can only tell you what is going on and nothing more. He did not deny nor agree to anything, making Desiree purse her scaly lips. Appraisal system message, cannot be appraised. Clicking her tongue, she sighed and gave in. She felt that even if this man wanted to kill them, he could any time. She did not even think they could escape. Sighing once more, she turned to Ointera and the rest and waved for them to lower their weapons. Let's go sit. We need to know what is going on. And since he is here, it means he is part of all of this. The group walked over and went to sit down. Normally the boss door would have slammed shut behind them, but it was still wide open. Desiree was about to sit fully when a stone block in the shape of a chair rose up from the ground. The cloaked man pointed to the chair and said, those of the dragon race should be treated with more respect. Desiree ignored the chair and sat down on the floor in front of it. I am no different from Ointera and the rest. If they sit on the floor, so shall I. The man's lips curled up as he mumbled, still the same. He sighed, and then stood up himself before sitting on the floor as well. Since that is the case, then I too will sit on the ground. Desiree grinned slightly, seeing this. She found the man to be rather strange. So what is it you want to tell us? Every world has another world that exists beside it, the cloaked man began. These worlds run on different timelines and laws. One world could be a world of technology, while another could be a world of magic, or a world with nothing on it whatsoever. Everything is based on what happens during those timelines that change the world compared to its clone. Think of it as parallel worlds. Sometimes these worlds are forcefully brought together. Some will merge into the other, or they will clip each other, causing catastrophic events. Hence, what happened to this world? Normally, it would only cause natural disasters, but there are times when the worlds will partially merge. Beings from both worlds will begin to appear. But now here is when things get complicated. Cloaked man sighed as he looked at the world around him. Your world and the other world are in a strange state. Those that disappeared were consumed by this world and turned into mana that now fills this world, while monsters and mana from the other world slowly seep into this world. They are still in the middle of merging. Soon this world may expand to 2 or 3 times its current size. The cloaked man's gaze never left Desiree as he wanted to see her reaction to all of this information. After all, he had come here for only one purpose only. He only had a limited time and had to pull strings to come to this place. He could not come back for some time. So this merger caused all of this. Desiree scratched her head. She still was unsure about a lot of things. Then what about my body? I was originally human. This is something that happens. As I said, your world split at some point, so the part of the DNA hidden deep within you was the cause of the transformation, since mana will bring out the old DNA and rewrite your own DNA, But don't worry, all races have a humanoid form. Dragons are known to be able to transform back and forth as well. Keep leveling and growing stronger. You'll be able to do more than just transform, but even soar through the sky. The cloaked man wanted Desiree to keep growing stronger. She had to protect herself. I will keep working hard. Desiree sighed once more. She had no choice but to work hard. She still had to get to where her father and friends were. She wondered how long that would take. Good. I must leave. The rewards for this level will be given as if you had defeated the boss of this dungeon. Tell those you come across about the merger. This is the only thing I ask. And Arya, stay safe. The cloaked man looked Desiree straight in the eye as he called her Arya. Desiree was quite confused. She was not stupid. She knew he was talking to her, but she did not know why he called her Arya. She wanted to ask, but he soon disappeared. A stack of items fell to the floor, and 2 notifications popped up in front of her. You defeated a dungeon boss. Vanishing Snake King experience points gained. Level up. Level up. She had reached level 15 and gained 10 more skill points. She was happy about this, but also felt things were still strange. She wondered just how much more the world would change. Would the current world she was in change dramatically to where she would not recognize it anymore? Why did that man seem to know her, and for some reason, deep down, she felt as if she knew who he was? Let's check the loot. Desiree decided to put her thoughts on hold. She had no way of answering anything. She could only concentrate on gaining 5 more levels. She walked over to find gold coins on the ground, along with some armor that was blue-colored and more materials. But these materials were also blue-colored. She picked them all up and put them away. The armor was a blue-quality armor, but was also metal. Vanishing King's chest armor level requirement, 13 HP, 30. Defense 50. Desiree looked at the armor and wondered how anyone was supposed to wear this. She went to stick it into her inventory when another system notification appeared. Notification, equipment window unlocked. Desiree looked at her menu and saw that it was indeed unlocked. She opened the equipment menu and saw a bunch of generic equipment slots, some of which were filled with the armor she put on. She wondered why it suddenly became accessible. Is it because it's a drop item? Desiree did not know, but she hoped this would make making armor easier for her later on. She equipped her new armor, and with a flash of light, her old armor came off, and her new armor went on. She looked down at herself and found that the armor really fit her perfectly. There was no tightness around anything. Even her wings had 2 slots they were poking out of. Boss! Your armor looks amazing, Umtera praised. None of the pigmen were mad that Desiree. After all, if not for her, they would not have had the chance to even complete a dungeon and level up. She took the brunt of all the damage and was always making sure none of them got hurt. Thanks. Although I wish I had gotten the equipment menu sooner. Could have saved time and materials on armor for myself. Desiree sighed at the thought of the wasted materials, but now she did have better quality materials, so she could make much better equipment for the pigmen. Let's head back. We will rest and spend a few days making new armor and weapons. After that, we will search for a higher level dungeon. Yeah. The pigmen all shouted at the same time, a big difference from when they first entered this place. The group did not have to go far to leave the dungeon. When they did, it was dark out. They had long lost track of how long they had been in the dungeon. They were all energetic and excited when they returned to camp to find it still intact. It was just that not far away, a set of eyes was watching them as they gathered around the campfire. Toblin's the next day, Desiree got to work on crafting. She wanted to get everyone new armor and weapons as soon as possible. Luckily, the pigmen had all gained more abilities as well. She started off by working on their spears. She did not think they should be switching weapons just yet. They could do that in their free time. For now, she wanted them to keep going with what they were comfortable with. While Desiree was working, Ointera walked over and whispered to her. Desiree lifted her head and looked at Ointera and narrowed her eyes. Drag them out. On it, boss! Ointera did not waste even a second as he raised his paw up to give the signal. Not even half a second later, a yell came from the tree line not far away. A very familiar voice could be heard. Let go of me. You are nothing but walking sticks of bacon. Ointera and Oinkiera both walked out of the bush holding a long ear each, a gray rabbit with a small horn and 2 long ears that were gripped by 2 pigmen dangled in the air, kicking and screaming. Desiree's eyes narrowed. What do you want, Jake? Disa. Tell these things to let me go. Jake yelled out. Jake had actually survived it all. He was a coward, so he hid. He had stumbled upon a goblin that was half dead. It attacked him, and in his panic he ended up killing it without meaning to. He only remembered blacking out from the pain of evolution, and then waking up as a rabbit. Since then he had been scavenging where he could. He had only accidentally stumbled upon Desiree the previous day when he saw her walking through the forest. Ointera looked at his boss and saw her shake her head no, so he signaled for the others to keep a tight grip on the rabbit. Desiree snorted before saying, Jake, why are you here? I think after everything that you said last time, you and I are no longer friends. Deza, are you still mad? I only said a few things in a fit of anger. I will apologize if you want. So tell these bastards to let go of me. Jake still did not seem to understand. He knew deep down that if Desiree was not here, he would be shaking in his fur, not willing to say a word, hoping he would be able to escape. Jake, I think you are not understanding something. You are yelling at my friends and calling them names. Who the hell are you to ask me for a favor? Last time you freaked out, thinking I was trying to get you killed. Now you are even giving me a half-assed apology like I would take it to heart. From the beginning to the end, you only want to seem superior. I mean, how can you be superior when you are a damn rabbit? Any one of my friends here can kill you in an instant. But you still want to act all high and mighty. Desiree snorted and stood up. She put down the half-finished spear tip in her hand and walked over to him. Her eyes turned cold as she said in a low voice, "I will let you go this once on account that we used to be friends, but I will say this now. If you even show up once in front of me again, I will roast you over a fire and eat you for dinner." Wah. Jake's eyes grew big. He looked like a scared rabbit. You wouldn't dare eat me. I used to be. Before he could finish, he felt something slice into his arm. He looked at the claw that was pulling back and looked up at Desiree, who began licking the blood off of it. "Jake, did you forget? I am a dragon. I am not human, nor are you. You are a rabbit, and a fat one at that. I can easily shove a stick in one end and out the other to slowly roast you over a fire. Your hide will make Ointera a new pair of socks. I can even make a toothpick out of your horn." The more Desiree said, the more the gray fur on Jake's body began to turn white. He realized that she was not kidding. She would really eat him. "I get it. I will not show up in front of you again." Jake could only bite his lip and yell this out. Desiree motioned with her head and Jake was finally set free. "Leave before you make me change my mind. It just so happens we have yet to decide on dinner." Jake quickly turned and ran away. Off in the distance, Desiree heard, "You will regret this. Boss, this." It is better to deal with those kinds of people before they come back after growing in strength. Ointera was worried. He did not know if the rabbit would somehow evolve and become powerful. "Ointera, what race am I?" Desiree asked. "Ah." Ointera rubbed his nose and oinked a few times. "Huh, boss, I was worried for nothing. But he was fat. If you want rabbit, I will not stop you, but I want the materials." Desiree could care less if Jake lived or died. So if Ointera wanted to hunt Jake, he could. "Then I will go try to find it." Ointera turned and ran off. He was quickly followed by 2 others. Desiree chuckled as she went back to working on the equipment. She hoped to reach level 3 in armor and weapon crafting in the next few days. Not long later, Ointera came back with the other pigmen with a sullen face. "Who knew rabbits were so quick?" Desiree chuckled as she finished the first spear. "Not bad." She turned and looked at Ointera and tilted her head. "No rabbit?" "Boss, you have no idea. Once that rabbit thing saw us, it cursed us a new one before running as fast as possible." Desiree laughed out loud as she handed him the spear in her hand. "This is called the Vanishing Spear. Vanishing Spear quality, rare damage, 50-62% chance to vanish from opponent's sight." It was long and bone-colored. This was, of course, since it was all made out of a bone from the Vanishing Team boss. She did not plan to just make the one either. She had enough to make all the pigmen spears. She also planned to use the fangs to make arrowheads. She found daggers were of no use to her, so she planned to make arrows and a bow using the materials on hand. She was sure she had enough materials, and if she made something out of the scope of her current crafting system, she could earn more experience towards her level, it seemed. The reason why she was doing a bow was mainly because of its ability to do things like ice arrows with lower mana cost. She had ice element mana. If she infused an object with her mana, she noticed that it would freeze over, and if enough mana was injected into the object, anything the object touched would start to freeze as well. She found that, With half the mana cost of an ice arrow, it was quite handy for times when she was out of mana and needed to slow an enemy to escape. This, in the long run, would give her another trump card for survival, as well as another means of pulling enemies. Since she knew in the foreseeable future she would be the tank of her party, she wanted to have as many manaless options as possible, so she could conserve them for when mana was truly needed. A few days passed, and Desiree had finished all the armor, as well as her bow and arrows, and more spears. Both her armor crafting and weapon crafting jumped to level 3. Currently, she was receiving a report from Ointera about some new sightings around their camp. So goblins? They seem to be a variant, Ointera began. There are 2 variants of goblins. The green-skinned goblins, who can only produce male offspring, so they need to find women to impregnate. And then there are the gray-skinned goblins, who are able to give birth to males and females and are much more civilized. They like to call themselves toblins. Toblins, huh? Desiree pursed her scaly lips. She wondered why they decided on such a stupid name. So are they just hunting, or are they looking to attack us? I am not sure. We have only been keeping an eye on them, and have not made contact as of yet. We did not report it until now since we wanted to see if they would leave on their own, Ointera replied. From now on, tell me right away if there are other races hanging around. Especially goblin-type races. Desiree hated goblins, but these were not goblins but toblins. Let's make contact. I want to know what they are doing. If they are enemies, we will kill them. If they are friendly, we will welcome them. Understood, boss. Ointera did not know much about the Toblins since they would always stay away from other races. But he figured this was due to the prejudice that others had against goblins in general. Desiree had Ointera follow her. Ointera already said they were low level, so there was no need for her to bring a bunch of people along. When they arrived, the Toblins who were pushing their wooden spears in the bushes all quickly turned around and pointed them at Desiree and Ointera. Put them down. We mean you no harm. How can we trust other races? A female Toblin spoke up. She was very wary of both Desiree and Ointera. As you can see, we do not have our weapons drawn. We just came to check to see if you plan to be our enemy or not. Desiree was honest. She was new to this diplomacy thing. The Toblin girl looked at Desiree, and then at Ointera, and took a step back. I still cannot trust you. But I can say that we have come in search of a prisoner that had escaped. Prisoner? Desiree's brow furrowed. What did they look like? Grey fur, long ears, and a short horn on their head. The Toblin girl did not hide anything. That damn rabbit. Ointera gritted his teeth. He was fat and juicy and escaped. Are you still on about that? Desiree asked. She had never seen a pig throw a fit over rabbit meat before. Why wouldn't I be? Boss, if you cooked it, just imagine how good it would have tasted. Ointera loved the meat that Desiree cooked. Oh. Desiree nodded. She also felt that Jake would have tasted good, slowly roasted with some peanut oil and some seasonings. She even had some mushrooms and other vegetables that she could have sautéed and stuffed in him. All right, you win. So you have seen it? The female Toblin asked. She was starting to think these people were not too bad. Yes, but he escaped, Desiree replied. Let's head to my camp. We can talk more there. Desiree and Ointera, along with the Toblins, sat down around the fire. Before we begin, We should probably introduce ourselves. My name is Desiree. Next to me is Ointera. Desiree went on and introduced all the pigmen. My name is Juna. Next to me are my guards, Rintu and Trina. Juna introduced her and the male and female guards at her side. Guards. Desiree tilted her head. If Juna had guards, then she was probably some kind of noble in the Toblin race. Yes. Believe it or not, I am a princess, or was. Now that I am on this world, I am no different from anyone else. I do not know how or why, but we suddenly appeared in this strange place. The air is different, so I know it is not the same world. Juna had keen senses for her race. She was one of the few shamans of the Toblin race. You are not wrong. You are in a different world, but at the same time not. You can think of this world as a different version of yours on a different timeline. Our worlds are slowly merging. In the future, there will be more of your people. So while you are just you now, once the world fully merges, you will see more of your kind. But I feel this world will end up being much more chaotic. Desiree did not even want to think of the wars that would soon start. She was sure there were areas undamaged with powerful military equipment, as well as things hidden underground that could destroy an entire world. Thinking about these things, Desiree wondered if she should stay here or move camp to an area near those areas. But she was afraid that if she did, she would run into someone else later on and end up being shot at. She was not sure how strong the people of the other places were at this time. I can see that. From what I can tell, you are from this world, while the pigmen are from my world. I can smell the difference, Juna sighed. She wondered just what would be happening in the future as well. How many of your people are here at this time? Desiree decided to ask. There was security in numbers after all. If she could get Juna to move her people here, they could slowly build up a fortified base. Then she could leave for a while to check out the area more. There are 20 of us. I was on my way from checking our borders to make sure those goblins and orcs were not trying to set up camps near our village. We were hit with a bright light and found ourselves on a pile of rubble, Juna sighed. She did not want to be here. If that's the case, then if you would like, you can come and join our camp. We have been exploring dungeons nearby and plan to level up more. I want to build a fortified fort here for us to stay in. They do say there is safety in numbers. Desiree was not afraid that Juna and the others would cause an issue. She could easily kill them all if they dared to attack. To have a dragon look out for my kind is strange. You are indeed not from my world. Juna felt funny. Although her skin was grey, she still looked like her kind's counterparts. Dragons would look down on her kind and put them in the same lot as the goblins. While they would not be actively hunted, if they appeared they would be attacked. She had long gotten used to the discrimination. As long as you are not like goblins, I am okay with you and your people staying here. Oingtir and the others will also not treat you any differently, either. You will be treated with respect here. Desiree understood from what Oingtir told her that Toblins were always looked down on. She hoped to change this. As Boss said, we will not treat you badly. As long as you do not attack us, we will show you the same respect you show us. Oingtera decided to speak up. He understood his boss wanted Juna and the others to come here. He also felt this was a good idea. They had too few people here. Juna hesitated for a moment before looking at her guards. The female guard Trina leaned over and whispered into her ear. Juna nodded before turning to Desiree and asking, "If we feel threatened at all, will you allow us to leave freely?" "Of course. I am not trying to hold anyone hostage. This is just a request. I feel it will be good if we can start a small community here and grow stronger together," Desiree answered. "Then we will accept your offer. My camp is about 3 hours from here. We will return first and then come back. But if you do see that long-eared rabbit again, please do capture it. It tried to steal our food supplies 2 days ago. Juna wanted to cook the stupid rabbit. It cursed at them as it ran away. She could not let it off." "All right. I will be sure to hand it over to you as soon as I see it again," Desiree sighed. It seemed Jake had grown bold since he left. But then again, in order to live this long until now, he would have had to muster up some courage. It seemed him going off on his own was for his own good. It's just too bad that he was still not very smart. Juna and her guards left quickly to get things settled on their end. Ointera scratched his head and asked, "Boss, are you sure this is okay? I mean, if things go as we were told, if we have certain races under our care, we might end up being targeted as well. That is why we need to get as strong as possible before that happens. But no matter what, Ointera, those we befriend we will not leave behind unless they betray us. Never betray others just because someone is putting pressure on you." Desiree hated it when people did that. She hated bullying altogether. That was why she put up with Jake for so long. She would have done her best to keep him alive no matter what. But he never stopped. Ointera quickly waved his hands back and forth. "Don't worry, boss. I would never turn my back on you or those you deem as friends. We have already devoted ourselves to following you. You do not need to devote anything," Desiree chuckled. "Anyway, let's get things ready. We will all help in building new shelters." They had a lot to do. Building 20 more shelters would take time, but with their levels much higher than before, and their strength and stamina much higher, they were easily running around with huge slabs of concrete walls and stacking them on top of one another, creating small huts quite quickly. In just 2 hours, they had already built 10 new stone huts. While they were nothing fancy, they were at least a shelter. When Juna and her kin came over, they were surprised to see so many new stone huts already built. "You did so much in such a short time. We will have 10 more huts done soon. You and your people can start settling in." Desiree was still overseeing things, so she could not talk at this time. She wanted to get these huts done, and then she wanted to start building a stone wall that was at least 10 feet high. If they got more people joining them later, then that was fine. Juna did not wish to stand around doing nothing while everyone else worked. She quickly had someone settle in her people, 1 per person per hut. She sent the rest to start helping build. While they were much weaker, they could still move small stones. With the extra hands, they were able to finish the last 10 huts in just under an hour. Everyone sat around the fire and ate a meal together for the first time. Ointera took the stage. He had been acting more and more like a leader since Desiree first met him. She guessed it was due to him finally leveling up. "I want to take a moment and welcome our new brothers and sisters. We may be of different races, but I hope we can all get along and work together. Boss has helped us all, and I hope you can help Boss in return, just as we try to do every day." Ointera raised his cup of juice that Desiree had poured everyone with a big smile. Everyone else did the same before letting out cheers. The pigmen and toblins began to mingle and quickly became friends. Desiree smiled seeing this. While toblins looked like goblins, they were not bad. She did not understand why they were so looked down upon. Of course, she would keep a watchful eye, but she did not sense anything wrong with how things were at this time. Miss Dragon. Juna walked over and bowed her head slightly. She was a little nervous to be talking with a dragon. Just Isa is fine. Or you can call me boss like the others. Although I have no idea why they call me that. Desiree rubbed her snout. Then I will call you like the rest. Juna felt this was the real way to go. Boss, I know my race will bring you troubles in the future, so if the worlds do merge, then I will leave with my people in order to not cause you any trouble. Juna, do not look down on me as someone who would force a friend out. If you never betray us, and help out as much as you can, then I will never turn my back on you, even if there are those who dare to say your race is bad. I myself do not like goblins. But toblins are different. I will not toss you aside. This I promise. Desiree could only sigh. Things had not even come to that point yet, and Juna was already willing to go into hiding again. Juna did not know how to feel. She was slightly happy, but she did not know if Desiree would change her mind later. For now, she will decide when the time comes. Then feel free to ask me and my people to do anything. For today, just settle in. Tomorrow, Ointera and the rest will be working on building a wall around our little village. I will be working on new gear for you and your people. While it will not be blue gear right away, it will at least be green quality. This is both weapons and armor. I will also bring a few of you on our next dungeon run. We are all trying to reach our first evolution. Desiree explained. I see. Are you really willing to bring me and my people into a dungeon? We are not all that. Juna felt something pressed against her lips. She looked at Desiree in confusion. Ointera and the rest were only level 1 and 2 when I first met them. Now, they are all levels 10 and 11. We will go to the low-level dungeon and work on getting your guys to level 10 first. Then we will be hitting the harder level dungeon once we find one. But before that, we will need to work on a few things to get settled down better. The next morning, Desiree called a meeting with Juna and Ointera to try to plan out a more sustainable village-type situation. So I was thinking we should try to form some kind of farmland and start planting what we can. We need to do more than just forage in the forest. If we eat everything around us, there will be nothing left for us, and we will need to move to another location. This is not very effective if we wish to build a fortified place to live. This is something my clan used to do as well. As you know, my kin, the Toblins are not very strong. We can only fight in numbers, which allowed us to ward off attacks from others, but staying hidden away also made it so we had no choice but to farm as well. We could not move around as a large group all the time. So when it comes to farming, you can leave it to me and my kin. Most of us have the farming skill. Even 2 of my guards have it maxed out. Juna felt this was a very good idea. To take certain plants and then grow them on their own was something her clan had been doing for hundreds of years. Then I will leave this to you. If you need any help, let us know. We should build our wall so that we can alter the size of our land at any time. Desiree used a stick to draw on the ground. We will put our farmland near the walls on the inside. We will dig a few wells near the farmland to make watering easier. We will need irrigation and compost to make sure the land stays fertile. I think we can also catch a few families of weak monsters to raise. This way, We can use their manure to make compost. Their milk is drinkable. We can make many things from that to help with food production like cheeses and other milk-based foods. Desiree began going over her ideas, one by one. Both Juna and Ointera nodded at the things she was saying. All right, we will go with that. We will spend the next week bringing this place into working order. We will first get the wall down. Juna and her kin will then till the land and get ready for planting. During that time, Ointera and his people will go hunting and searching for monsters to raise. They will bring one of the toplins along so they can gather seeds and other items that they will need. I will bring some of the toplins around to kill monsters around the area to get them leveled up so they can get first aid. Does this work for you too? Desiree asked as she looked at Juna and Ointera. Boss, I will follow your orders. You do not need to worry about my opinion. Ointera was very loyal. If Desiree said jump, he would jump. Yes, we will follow your plan, Juna nodded. She was starting to feel that Desiree was quite amazing. All right, we will get started then. Desiree stood up. She patted the dust off her before looking around at the clearing that the others had been working on and smiled. She couldn't help but think to herself, Dad, when I can finally find you, I will be able to show you the new home I have built for us. Desiree did not know where her father and her friends were, but she knew that once she was strong enough, she would go search for them. But she first needed to settle things here and make this a place that could run on its own if she were to leave for a month or so. That day was filled with nothing but wall building. Desiree and the others lugged cement block after cement block around the encampment. They cleared trees and made the area much bigger as well. Compared to before, it looked like the start of a decent-sized village. Ointera had decided to make the wall around the village thicker and wider so that they could get on top of it and keep a lookout. They even made a gate using large logs. With the skills that they had on the pigman side, the log gate actually rose up from the ground using a pulley system. This meant 2 people always had to be on the lookout at all times. While this was a little rough with the lack of higher levels at the time, Desiree felt that once the toplins leveled up as well, it would be no problem for them to help out with gate watch. Desiree did as she promised and took toplins out to level them up, getting almost all of them to level 4 within a week. Juna had her people till the land and in no time had 3 plots of land set up to plant the seeds they had harvested from the forest. Things were starting to look up as they all began forming a new community together. Everyone worked together and protected each other. For the Toblins, this was the first time they had been treated as an equal. 2 weeks later, Desiree stood up on the newly constructed stage that would be used for village meetings. We have all worked hard for the past 2 weeks. While there is still more to do, we can now slow down slightly. I will be taking a group of Toblins with me to a dungeon north of here. It is where Ointera and the rest reached their current level. I plan to get all of you to level 10 before moving to the next dungeon. This way, I can outfit you all with better gear. So, for now, we will do a lottery of who will go with me. We will set out tomorrow. Evolution currently. Desiree was standing outside the boss room in the secluded cave. To her right was Juna, and to her left was Ointera. She figured having one more high level to help with this would make things go smoother. Luckily she did, since one of the Toblins almost died on the way here. Juna, I will be honest with you. We have yet to fight the boss. The last time we came here, a man appeared here instead of the boss. So we never got to fight the boss. While you all have leveled up to level 8 and 9, it is still very dangerous to face this boss. If you do not want to risk it, we will turn back. I will come back with Ointera and the other pigmen and try to fight the boss first, so we have a better understanding of its quirks. Desiree wanted to give Juna a choice. She could risk it and try to fight the snake, or they can turn back now and return to the village. We will go. My Toblin race is not so weak that they will back down from a challenge. Juna held the staff they had looted from a treasure chest in her hand firmly. She did not want to be looked down upon anymore. All right. Then we will go in. Desiree was actually quite curious as to what this boss looked like. It was named the Vanishing King, so she was sure it had some kind of movement or invisibility skill. When Desiree pushed the door open and stepped inside with the others, the room began to light up. In the center lay a large black-scaled snake with 3 horns on its head that were positioned in such a way and shaped oddly, giving one the impression on first look that it was wearing a crown. I saw. Boss, Vanishing King level, 13 monster rank, DHP 2,870 MP, 765. A rank D monster. Desiree frowned. She still had no idea how these rank things worked, but it seemed that out of everyone here, only she had a rank, and she was rank F. This boss was 2 ranks higher and had much more health than her. Tara, the 2 of us will start the fight. You will wait for my signal to attack. Just in case, keep an eye on the ground for any strangeness. If you see a spot glowing under your feet, do not stand there and quickly move. Desiree gave out her orders to Ointera before turning to Juna and the rest. You all will wait for my signal. But watch closely to the monster's attacks and how Ointera and Also, if you see anything glowing under your feet or any kind of discoloration with the ground under you, quickly move out of the way. You will only have a few seconds to react. If you get hit by a spell or attack, myself and Ointera will not be able to save you. Don't worry, boss, just concentrate on the fight. If we are unable to move, then that just means that was how far our journey to gain power was meant to go. Juna knew her people were very grateful. They were the most powerful people in their entire clan. Their race could finally hold their heads high and not worry about being squashed by many races. So even if a few of them died here, it was for a cause that they had never dreamt would be possible. No dying. Just react, Desiree stated firmly. She did not want to lose anyone. She took a deep breath and looked at Ointera. He nodded, and the 2 rushed in. As soon as they crossed the first pillar, the doors to the boss room slammed shut, locking them in. It was now live or die. Ointera, I will go in first. Hold back until I signal. Desiree gave out another order before drawing her bow and letting loose an arrow. This was a normal arrow. It was nothing more than to get the boss's attention on her, while Ointera got into position. The arrow flew through the air and slammed into the side of the sleeping boss's head. A clanging sound that sounded like metal on metal was heard, followed by the sound of a very angered roar. Eroar! The boss let out a mighty roar. It was a snake, but it seemed to be evolving into a new kind of monster. She ran right up to the boss and fired off a few ice arrows to distract it while she went in for a melee attack. Her claws created sparks as the boss reared up and roared in pain. Her ice arrows slammed into its left eye, causing it some damage. Her claws barely scratched the scales of the snake, causing her to frown. How does a snake have such hard scales that a dragon can't even cut through them? Desiree pursed her scaly lips as she continued her onslaught. She would use ice arrows to blind it, causing it a bit of damage while she attacked with her claws, looking for the soft spot just under its belly. Desiree had not even noticed that she was attacking so fast and hard that the health bar of the boss was actually quickly shrinking. Oimtera and the rest stared at Desiree with eyes filled with worship. Their boss was soloing the dungeon boss. Their boss was the better boss. Oimtera now. Desiree finally realized she had already cut the boss's health in half. She was using a method that seemed to keep the boss from being able to attack at all, which would interrupt the boss's ability to see any targets. Oimtera quickly snapped out of his daze and charged in. His spear was made with the boss's body parts, so it was easily doing damage. Although, it was nowhere close to the amount of damage Desiree was doing. Oimtera did not wish to be left behind, so he sped up his attacks, searching for the weakest point on the boss. The boss that originally had only 2,870 HP was now down to 1,134 HP. Boss, I think they can join now. Go. Oimtera, back off. Desiree had looked over to see the boss's tail starting to turn into a black fog. It was slowly moving up the boss's body. Wow. Oimtera felt something was very off as he quickly jumped back and out of the way. The spot where he was standing suddenly cracked open and parts of the stone floor were sent in all directions. The name Vanishing King actually holds meaning. Desiree gritted her teeth. She should have foreseen that the boss would pull something off. Now that it had turned into a black fog, she had no choice but to wait out its attack timer, if it had one. But what made her a little annoyed was that it was still attacking her, so she could not move from her spot and could only rely on her senses to dodge its attacks. Oimtera quickly retreated to where Juna and the others were. His job was to help make sure they stayed alive. Juna had a worried look on her face as she watched Desiree struggling with a boss she could not even attack. Will boss be okay? Boss is a dragon? Of course, she will be okay. Oimtera had a strong trust in Desiree. It was to the point that if he had a statue of Desiree, he would worship it every day. Juna felt a little more at ease hearing Oimtera's confidence, although she had no idea where he got this confidence. But she had seen what Desiree could do, so she chose to believe that Desiree would pull through. While the others watched with worried expressions, Desiree was busy dodging an attack after attack. The boss was slamming its tail and swiping it back and forth. If she did not sense the change in the wind, she would have long been beaten black and blue. Because in front of her was nothing but a black fog, she could not even make out the outline of the boss anymore. It just looked like a fog and nothing more. This is so annoying. Desiree couldn't help but complain as she took a deep breath. Ice breath. She jumped up into the air, flapping her wings to give herself a bit of hang time as she let loose a stream of ice breath at the floor and onto the black fog. The black fog seemed to be freezing over as the particles of water within it began to freeze under Desiree's ice breath. A roar filled the air as the boss suddenly reappeared. It was covered in ice and looked very sluggish. It seemed Desiree's ice did not just cover the outside of its body, but the inside as well. Boss, Vanishing King level, 13 monster rank, DHP, 102,870 MP, 234,765. Looks like that was a critical hit. Juna, come and attack. Oimtera, protect them. Desiree wanted to give the last hit to the Toblins. If she knew the first half of the battle was the easiest part, she would have allowed them to attack sooner. Juna raised her spear and rushed forward with her kin and began attacking the boss with everything she had. Oimtera did not attack, and only waited for the last of the boss's health to deplete. You defeated, boss. Vanishing King experience points gained. Level up! Level up! Desiree saw the notification that the boss had been killed and smiled as she watched the body disappear, leaving behind a pile of treasure and materials. Desiree walked over and looked at the loot as she said, "That was a bit insane, but luckily, I now know what to do." Desiree was also surprised that she got to levels out of the deal as well. She could only guess that she must have been close to level 16 to be able to hit level 17 on the boss from level 15. Boss, there is another chest armor piece here. Ointera pointed at the chest armor on the ground. It was the same one Desiree was currently wearing. It's yours. Go and take it. We will farm this dungeon and get everyone these chest pieces, or whatever else might drop from this boss. The stats are better than anything I can make at this time. Desiree put all the materials and money into her inventory and looked at Juna and the rest, and gave them a scaly smile. You all did great, and each of you has leveled up by leaps and bounds. Juna, you will keep coming with Ointera and me as we level up your kin. Once we have gotten everyone of level, we will take turns farming for materials here and get ready for the next dungeon. Even if the experience gets slow, at least we can all be ready for what is to come. Desiree had decided. Since they could easily run this dungeon many times, they might as well make use of this dungeon to get better gear and a level or two more each run. This way, they could start using materials that were below the blue quality to make things like blankets and other tools. Another week passed, and everyone in the village had already been outfitted in blue gear. Desiree was with Juna, Ointera, and the other pigmen, and was fighting the boss one last time in this dungeon. Mainly because after so many boss kills, Desiree was about to hit level 20. After she hit level 17, it took her almost 4 boss kills to hit level 18 and then 6 more kills to hit level 19. She was now on her 8th boss kill after farming the dungeon all day. Ointera, if I start evolving right away, you need to stand guard. Don't worry, boss. I will be sure to protect you with my little Oink life. Ointera would make sure no one could touch his boss. He was now level 17. He would never have gotten this far if not for his boss carrying him all the way and paving the way for him to actually dream of becoming powerful. Boss, we all will protect you, no matter what. Juna's eyes now looked at Desiree, as if she was a goddess. She was now level 15, and was the most powerful Toblin her tribe ever had. She wondered if she would be able to become a Yoblin when she finally evolved. I am relying on you both. Desiree smiled as she turned and smacked the boss snake with her claws, sending it flying into the dungeon wall. It turned into balls of light, leaving behind a pile of treasure. The magic words appeared in front of Desiree, causing her to feel very excited. Level 20. You have reached the requirements for evolution. Would you like to evolve now? Yes. No. Desiree took a deep breath before sitting down. I will now begin my evolution. Send someone back to the village if it takes more than a few hours. Understood, boss. Ointera knew that people would be worried if they did not return by dark. Desiree took a quick look at her stats. Name, Desiree Harris. Race, Ice Struggling. Age, 14. Level, 20. Monster rank, F. Evolution requirements, reach level 20. HP, 3,245. 3,245. MP, 201. 2,200. 2. Ice immunity. LVL max. Appraisal. Ian Snow. LL2. Professions weapon crafting. 3, counting, L, 3, hunting, L, the foraging, O, pass, 3, cooking, girth, 3. Gah! She now had 46 status points. She did not spend any points just in case she needed them after she evolved. After checking her stats, she closed her menu and then took a deep breath. She reached out with her claw and poked the yes button. Desiree suddenly felt like she was being pulled by some mysterious force, but she could tell she was not moving at all. Before she could figure out what was going on, she passed out. Evolution system started. Finding evolution paths found. Waking host's consciousness. Waking successful, Desiree felt like the world around her was slightly hazy. She was in a white space with nothing around her. Please select evolution path. A notification popped up in front of her. She realized this must be part of the system. 3 choices appeared under the last message. Dragon, young ice dragon, Draken Lisa. Desiree sighed. She had no idea what a dragon was, nor did she know what a draken was. They did not even give an explanation. Are they doing this to make fun of me? Either way, she had already invested herself in ice magic, so she would have gone with young ice dragon anyways. She reached up and poked the young ice dragon button. Not even a second passed, and she passed out once more. Evolution path chosen. System error. Finding solution. Adjusting DNA structure. Adjustment completed. New race combination. Changing young ice dragon to young ice dragon goddess. Unlocking goddess parameters. System error. Forcefully downgrading realm to mortal. Goddess status activated. New requirements per evolution added. Evolution will now commence. While Desiree was evolving, Ointera and Juna had worried looks on their faces. Brother Ointera, will Boss be okay? Boss has never failed us. We can only believe in her, Ointera replied. He had never seen anyone evolve before, so he was unsure of how it worked. But no matter what, he would believe in his boss. Juna could only nod and watch on as time ticked by. After 2 hours, Ointera sent someone back to the village to tell them that they were okay. After almost 5 hours passed, Ointera suddenly felt like the room was starting to get very cold. Juna, is it just me, or is it cold in here? Ointera let out a puff of white mist from his mouth. When he looked over at Juna, he saw her huddling up with one of her female guards. So he was sure he was not imagining things. He turned to the swirling mana not far from them, and felt that it had grown exceptionally small and seemed to be turning an ice blue color. Right before his eyes, he saw the mana suddenly get sucked into the dome all at once, before suddenly bursting out in all directions. He covered his face to protect it from the sudden shock wave of mana. When he uncovered them again, he was met with a humanoid figure floating in the air with her eyes closed. White hair, as white as snow. Blue horns that looked like they were carved from deep blue ice. Blue scales covered her private parts and parts of her arms and legs. Beautiful round face with pearly white skin. On her back were 2 wings that seemed to be made of ice as well. And down further was a blue-scaled tail that gently swayed back and forth. Slowly the figure's eyes opened and blinked a few times. She looked around and met eyes with Ointera and smiled. I seem to have finished my evolution. Ointera's mouth opened so wide he could hit an entire grey back in it. He was in utter shock. The person before him was his boss. This evolution was too huge. The change was much different from what he had expected. Desiree looked down at herself and saw that she was standing there without any clothing on, but this did not seem to bother her in the slightest. Mainly because everything that needed to be covered up was covered up. Even the bottom of her feet was covered in scales protecting them from harm from the rocky dungeon floor. She looked at her hands and gripped her fists and smiled. Her ice blue eyes shined brightly when she felt the strength within her. Not bad at all. Desiree smiled. She opened her menu and looked at her inventory. She saw that all the armor she had been wearing before had been unequipped. She equipped them before opening her status menu to see what her stats were at now. Luckily, thanks to the equipment window, even if the original items were made smaller, they magically became big enough and fit her perfectly. It was just now her original shorts showed a great deal of her thighs. However, they were partially covered in ice blue scales. When she finally looked at her stats, her eyes widened. The stats in front of her were 10 times more than she had ever expected. Name: Desiree Harris. Race: Ice Dragon Goddess. Current realm: Mortal. Age: 18. Level: 20. Monster rank: E. Realm Advanced Requirements: Reach level 50. Kill 1,000 enemies. Raise your affinity with ice to 70%. Create a domain with 10,000 followers. Evolution requirements: reach level 100. Kill 2 demigods. Complete 3 level 100 dungeons. Solo HP 4,567. 4,567. MP 3,289. 3,289. Elemental affinity: ice 20. Immunity: EVL max. Healing snow: L5. Partial transformation: LVVL max. Full transformation: LVL max. ID twice. Goddess skills: Frozen step, woven step. Goddess skills: Frozen step, 1. Professions: 2 weapon, crafting, K armor. 3. Hunting. But what confused her the most were the new things. Ice Dragon Goddess. Goddess. Desiree tilted her head to the side. She did not seem to understand why she had suddenly become a goddess. She had only chosen to become an ice dragon. Current realm is mortal. Age 18, level 20. Why did I suddenly age 4 years? Desiree felt slightly depressed. She sighed and continued looking at her stats. She went to sit on the floor, but paused when Ointera suddenly yelled out, "Boss, watch out!" Desiree paused and looked down. Right in the spot she was about to sit was a sharp, pointy rock sticking up. It seemed to be egging her on, asking her to take a seat if she had the guts. Desiree frowned and waved her hand. A large chair made of ice appeared under Desiree. She sat down on it and crossed her legs up under her. She could have sworn she had read a story once about a dragon girl who had made enemies with all rocks in every realm. So I'm ranky now and have 2 requirements? When she looked at the hefty requirements, her eyes dimmed slightly. It was not that she was unwilling to reach them, it was just that they were asking for a lot. Her elemental affinity also now had a status on it. She only had a 20% affinity, and in order to get to the next realm, she had to raise it by 50%. Just reading through the requirements of both her evolution and realm requirements made her want to cry. As her gaze fell on her skills, she suddenly looked down at the ice chair under her and realized that she had created this chair without much thought, but it was actually due to her new ice manipulation skill. She had instinctively created it without realizing it. Besides ice manipulation, I also got partial and full transformation. I guess this is for my dragon forms. All my skills that deal with ice are also at level 5 as well, which is good. But goddess skills? She wrinkled her brow and looked at the 2 spells under it. Frozen Step lets me create frozen footholds on any surface. I can even create them in the air, but they will only last a few seconds while in the mortal realm. Desiree pondered for a moment and sighed. While it was maxed out, she still had to be in a higher realm to use it properly. However, its current state could help her in a fight or escape. She scratched her head and looked at the other skill. Absolute 0. Passive and active. Passive always generates an area of cold air around you. When activated, it turns everything in a 100-foot radius into ice. At level 1, this can only be used once a day. At level 10 in the mortal realm, it can be used 5 times a day. My guess is when I get out of the mortal realm, I can use it even more than that. Boss? Omtera wondered if there was something wrong with his boss. She kept talking to herself. He did not know if her evolution made her brain messed up. Desiree snapped out of her thoughts and looked at Omtera with a questioning gaze. What's wrong? Nothing. Omtera did not dare ask if her brain was right. He did not wish to die. So he decided to change the subject. So, boss, how was it? The evolution process? Desiree thought for a moment before saying, I do not remember any pain, so I do not think you will have any issues. However, there was a choice selection, which gives you no details about the evolution path you can take. So be careful picking. You do not want to suddenly become an ant or something. I think an ant fits him well, Juna teased. Omtera snorted and shook his butt at her, causing everyone to laugh. Desiree smiled and said, Since we are done here, we should head back. I'm sure the others are worried about us. On the way back, Desiree told them about her next evolution requirements, which Omtera found strange. From what I know, the second evolution should have been at level 40. It is done every 20 levels. I do not know either. But I think my evolution path is a bit special. Desiree did not reveal that she had some kind of god race now. She really did not know what to make of this. But what she did know was that she was a bit disappointed in her chest area. She was supposed to be 18 years old now, but her poor chest had only grown a small amount since her previous human form. Desiree let out a long sigh as she continued walking to camp. When they arrived, all the pigmen and toblins stared at Desiree in shock. But once Omtera yelled at them, they all began running around to get set up to hold a big celebration. Their boss had evolved. It called for a huge celebration. On the floating island that had long departed from where Desiree was currently located, Ricky was sitting on a tall rock wall looking out into the forest. During this time, Ricky and the kids had secured a large area for themselves and built a wall. They even had a water source, so they only needed to provide food. Harris, dinner is ready. Becky had a plate of food in her hand. Everyone was now level 8. They had worked hard and cleared out the orcs, and even secured a decent amount of monster meat. Ricky turned around to see the young girl smiling back up at him. Her white, scaly face seemed to have a tinge of pink in her cheeks. She held the plate and slowly made her way up the ladder they had built to get to the top of the wall and placed it down next to him. Hey, Becky, you have been with Dessa since you were little. What do you think she is doing right now? Knowing her, she is probably already high level. She has always been one to push forward. She would do what she needed to do to get up to us. And that would mean leveling up. Daisa is strong-minded, so you do not need to worry about her. Becky could only sigh. She hoped her best friend was okay. She, you, and Mike had already put their human lives behind them. They were looking toward the future now, but she had a problem. The man next to her was her first love, and even to this day she still loved him. But she had to hide it in her heart since this man was her best friend's father. She could not rightfully ask her best friend to call her mom. That is true. Ricky sighed. He never stopped worrying about his daughter. He could only hope she was safe and sound. Tomorrow, we will spread out a bit more and see if we can map out the region. We need to see what is out there now that things have changed. If we find any orc or goblin camps nearby, we will need to get rid of them as well. But only if our levels are even or higher than what we encounter. Otherwise, we will run. If it is just a single monster that is a few levels higher, then we can take it on in a group. But we must be careful no matter what. I will let the others know. Mr. Harris, are we going to always stick together? Becky asked. She felt shy asking this, but she really wanted to know. We are all one family now. If we do not stick together and protect each other, then who will? Ricky had taken these kids as his own. As an adult, he felt responsible for them. He would protect them no matter what. Becky couldn't help but pout a little. She understood the meaning of his words, but she also felt slightly relieved. She would not need to part with Ricky anytime soon. Back at Desiree's camp. Ah, true. Desiree rubbed her nose and frowned slightly. Is Becky hitting on my dad again? Boss? You sick? Ointera asked. His entire face was covered in grease. In his hand was an earth boar leg. He was basically eating a close cousin. No. I think a little vixen is trying to wiggle her way into my backyard. Desiree sighed. She had long known Becky's feelings for her father, but she would never allow it. She could see Becky's smug expression now as she stood in front of her with her arms crossed in front of her chest, saying, "Come on, call me mother." A cult? Few days later, Desiree had a meeting with both Juna and Ointera. We need to figure out our next step. We are getting too high level for the current dungeons. Our route to the lower level dungeon will need to come under our full control. If we take in more people in the future, we will need to give them the ability to make it to the dungeon and back easily. Boss, what if we have one person do escorts? They can even get paid for doing it. By the time we start bringing in more people, we will need to start some kind of currency so we can buy and sell things. After all, you cannot keep giving things out for free. Ointera made a good point. Dungeons gave gold for killing monsters. While it was not always something that dropped, it was still a means of getting cash even if they had no skills other than fighting. People who had crafting skills could make armor. Those that needed it would need to produce the materials and/or pay extra for the materials from the merchant, if the merchant had them on hand. It would build a decent economy. It would be half based on barter since you could also pay with materials if the craftsman or merchant needed them. And this went for not just craftsmen either, but also other trades. I think we will also need to improve our current living conditions. If we continue as we are, we will be looked down upon when the worlds finish merging, Juna added. All right. We will start circulating money for work and buying and selling of goods once we reach over 50 people. Right now, we do not need it just yet. But once we reach a population of 50, it will need to be done. We will also need a village guard. As for newer buildings, do we have the ability to make something better than what we have? Desiree asked. She was unsure about all of this. With our current strength, we can easily process wood and make new homes, Oinktera replied. All right, we will do things one step at a time. First, let's look into reinforcing the current walls around our village, maybe expanding it even more than it is. If we can reclaim more land, that would be for the best. Then we can produce more farmland and even have some new buildings put in. Desiree felt that although they did not need too much land right now, if a large group of people came, it would be better to be ready beforehand than to end up having to do it then and there. I will get my people on it. Besides those doing the farmland, there are many just sitting around at this time. We will expand the village in all directions starting tomorrow. Juna also felt like it was a good idea to expand the village walls once more. I will have my people start cutting down trees and processing the wood into boards so we can start building proper homes. This time, they will have proper facilities as well. Oinktera knew now that his boss had her humanoid form. She would need to bathe properly. Then I will leave these things to you two. I will be heading out tomorrow to check the other spot, marked on the map. If it turns out to be a dungeon, I will take a peek to see what level it is. If it is not too bad, we can start leveling once more as well. Desiree did not want to stop growing stronger. While her new evolution requirements and this new realm requirement were quite high, it would still allow her to grow stronger with each level she raises. The last thing Desiree wanted was for the worlds to merge and for her not to have a foothold to stand on. If she was not strong enough, how would she be able to keep those she sees as friends safe? While yes, she wanted to catch up with her father, the current had no means of finding them now. For all she knew, they could be floating over the ocean. She had tested her new wings. At most, she can hover in the air for a while. Flight was still too hard. Her wings felt very heavy. She was unsure if it was because she had just got new larger ones, or if it was because she was too weak to use them properly. She hoped she could one day fly through the sky. Boss, if you are going to check the dungeon, let me go with you. Oinktera's eyes were sparkling. After getting used to dungeons, he was all for doing more. He had grown so much confidence compared to the meek pigman who once did not even dare look at Desiree. You can come. Juna, you can come too. But you both need to pass down your orders on what needs to be done first. Desiree did not mind company. It would be boring by herself anyways. Then, I will happily join you. Juna did not mind getting the first shot at becoming stronger in a new dungeon. Then it is settled. We will set out tomorrow morning. For now, let's get things in order. Make sure there are 2 guards on rotation. We do not want to be taken by surprise by some monster or another race. How? Is this the place? Oinktera asked as he looked around. The place did not look too welcoming. The trees in the area were dead, and many razor-teeth crows were flying about. Luckily, these kinds of monsters did not attack living beings. Otherwise, they might end up being swarmed. It's what we circled on the map. But who would have thought it would change so much since the last time we came? Desiree frowned slightly. The world was changing little by little, which meant the merger was still going on. She did not know how this world would look in the future, but she was sure as hell not going to let it defeat her. Look over there. There looks to be a mine shaft. Juna pointed over to their left. Sure enough, on a large mound that stuck out of the ground, a mine shaft entrance could be seen. Desiree's eyes glowed when she saw this mine shaft. If there was a mine shaft, that meant there should be ore, right? Let's go take a look on Terra. Take this. Desiree handed over a pickaxe. If it is a dungeon with lots of ore, I want you to mine as much as possible between fights. I will also be doing the same. Juna, you will keep a lookout for more monsters as well. We will take things slow. We need to make sure we do not stumble upon any trap. Got it, boss? The two said at the same time. Desiree nodded, and the two slowly walked into the entrance of the mine. Discovered Eiling's mine's experience points gained. Remember, take it slow. Desiree reminded the two. They slowly made their way into the mines and looked around. The entrance area was nothing but a tunnel, but it slowly opened up to a small room that had a bunch of old rusted minecart tracks that had broken boards and even a few toppled over minecarts. There were many spots with glowing rocks that Desiree found to be something called nightstones. Rocks that had a natural glow to them. Let's mine some of these nightstones first. Desiree felt they would be very handy for the village. Juna, when you have the walls moved to expand, we will expand in this direction instead. This place is contained in a small dead-end crevice. If we move our village walls to take control of this area, we will have full access to this dungeon. I was thinking the same thing. Just these nightstones would go for a decent price. Untera thought this place was very good. To have the ability to mine nightstones from a dungeon was not something many had a chance to. They could monopolize the entire industry. I will do as boss says. Juna nodded her head. She was more than willing to follow her boss's orders. She did not know much about nightstones, but with what Ointera said, they would be very good for the village in the future. We will have 2 teams who will come to the dungeon and farm nightstones in the future. They will wait for the dungeon reset before going back in. They do not even need to go deep into the dungeon. It was a perfect spot to really start gathering wealth for their village. Although it also might attract trouble as well, but to gain wealth, one must be willing to step on people's toes. After collecting what they could, Desiree headed deeper into the dungeon. From the room they were in was a tunnel that had a few twists and turns. It was when they reached a fork they had to stop. I smell something. Desiree frowned. It did not smell fresh at all. I think this is a dungeon filled with undead. Ointera guessed. He could also smell the rotting smell. Then make sure to aim for their heads. But, for now, stay here. I will go check the levels. Desiree wanted to be absolutely sure that they could take these monsters head-on before just rushing. Desiree left the two at the fork before following the stench down the side tunnel. This tunnel was not as lit as the others, but this did not matter to her. She could still see perfectly fine. She turned her arms and legs into dragon form as she walked down the tunnel. She wanted to be ready for everything. She also found her partial transformation quite useful. While she was a little nervous about her full transformation, she decided she would try it once things calmed down a little. The only reason she was nervous was because she did not know if it was ugly or not. Desiree came to a stop when she heard shuffling not too far away. She quickly used appraisal. Elite, Undead Miner level, 19 monster rank, DHP, 2300 MP, Asthal, Elite, Undead Miner level, 22 monster rank, DHP, 2700 MP, 3001, 30 under level, 21. Monster rank, DHP. 2550 MP. 1256, 1256. Desiree picked up 3 undead. When she saw their levels, she raised an eyebrow. She slowly backed away, not daring to go forward since she did not know how they would aggro. She quickly returned to the fork to see both Juna and Oimtera standing guard at each tunnel entrance. Oimtera called out first when he saw her coming. "We can't go any further. We will need a full team. This seems to be a level 20 dungeon." Level 20. Oimtera's eyes went wide in surprise. To be a level 20 dungeon meant that if they were careful, everyone in the village could finally evolve. "Boss, when do you think we can clear it?" "In about a week's time. Let's get the main things in the village done first. We need to prioritize our advancement and make the village into a real village." While Desiree also wished to quickly get this dungeon done, she knew she had to finish things up at home first. Days passed while Desiree worked on her village. During this time, a girl with cat ears and a tail was running through the forest. "Naya? Why do they always chase me now?" Her white hair fluttered behind her as she ran as fast as she could. Behind her were 2 large pig-faced men, but these were not those of the pigman race, but orcs. They were like the goblins of the pig race. Because of the distinct features, the pigmen and orcs were not placed in the same boat. They were very much 2 different races. And because they were also a race that only had male offspring, they had to hunt down women to mate with, and any race was no exception. As for the cat girl, she was not only a woman, but also a budding one who had the scent of a virgin on her, which made her even more sought after by the orc races who liked virgins the most. While she was beautiful, this did not matter to orcs. She was only level 11 and had been on a walk just outside her village. Before she knew what was going on, she had found herself in a strange place. She had been walking around for a few days killing monsters and finding wild vegetables for food, but it seemed she was deemed to be unlucky because she had accidentally run into 2 Orcs, which were both level 15. She had no weapon and no means of being able to kill an orc. She was nowhere near strong enough. As the cat girl ran, her tail swayed back and forth. Her mind was throwing a fit. She was tired and wished she could just take a small rest. She had tears in her eyes as she looked up at the sky peeking through the trees and decided to pray. "I swear, oh gods above, if you save me this time, I will be your devout follower forever and ever. I do not want to be taken by the orcs." Oink. A loud, shrill oink came from behind the cat girl, causing her to almost trip over her own feet. She came to a stop and turned around to see what had happened. But when she felt like she was seeing a goddess. Standing there with one foot stomping on an orc's head was a girl with ice blue scales on her body, a tail that swayed back and forth, and 2 horns on her head. Ice foamed around her as her snow-white hair fluttered in the breeze. "I hate orcs. Wait. Can I cook them? Will Oimtera and the rest be able to eat orc meat? Is that cannibalism?" The cat girl was stunned at the fact that the newcomer seemed to be talking to herself without a care in the world, nor fear of the other orc that was about to hit her with a tree. She watched as the strange girl raised her hand and stopped the tree trunk with the tip of her finger. Seconds later, the other orc was also smashed into the ground, its head crushed just like its companion. "A goddess!" The cat girl suddenly screamed out. She was not bothered by the bloody mess in front of her. She quickly ran up to the figure and dropped to the ground, bowing her head. "Goddess, thank you for saving my life." "Goddess?" The girl tilted her head to the side. But when the girl remembered that she did indeed have such a word in her status menu, she no longer thought about it. Instead, she turned to the matter at hand. She placed her hands on the orcs, making their bodies disappear. Only when she collected her prey did she turn her attention to the girl. "Are you all right?" "Huh?" "Yes." The cat girl let out a small squeak. She had to admit the girl in front of her was just as beautiful as a goddess. "That's good. Let me ask you, did you lose your clan? Did more of your people come to this new world?" The girl asked. "Ah, no. I found myself here just a few days ago. I do not know how to get back to my clan." The cat girl's ears and tail dropped. She really wanted to go home. "I see. Then come back with me. The world merger will still take some time, it seems, so it will not be safe for you to be wandering around for the time being." The girl paused as if realizing something and said, "Right, my name is Desiree. I am originally from this world." The cat girl was a little happy but also wary when Desiree asked her to go with her, but she was a bit unsure of what she should do. However, she did decide to give her name. "And my name is Nina." "Then, Nina, follow me." Desiree did not want to just stand around in case more monsters came. Nina nodded and quickly followed Desiree. Her eyes shined every time she looked at the beautiful goddess walking next to her. You said you are originally from this world?" Nina asked. "Yes. I was actually once human as well. This world was filled with humans. There were no other sentient beings on this planet. But that all changed when the merger began. I was just a normal 14-year-old girl. Going to school, going home, spending time with my amazing father. But then all of this happened, and I turned into a dragon. I only recently got my current form." Desiree couldn't help but show a sad expression when she thought about her old life. It was so simple. No fighting or risking her life. Although she did wonder, would she go back to her old ways if she could? Now she could use magic. She could actually fight, and was now the thing she loved most in her past life, a blue dragon. Could she really go back to her old life? A life where she would go to school and graduate. Maybe even go to college. Get a job that would probably go nowhere. Grow old and die. She did not know if she would ever have kids, or if she would have ever gotten married. She had a lot of what-ifs about her old life. But no. Here she was. Growing 4 years older in a single evolution. She found it funny that the system could actually push her age by 4 years. She just hoped her age would not get any older than it was now. She did not wish to be a grandma while her friends still looked young. Nina's eyes widened. She never thought the goddess next to her used to be a dirty human. Of course, this did not change her attitude toward Desiree. In any case, the goddess next to her saved her life and treated her kindly. There was just one more question that really made Nina curious. "Are you not cold?" Nina's question was a valid one. Desiree was not wearing any. Her private bits were covered in scales, but they did not look all that safe for work. It left a lot for one to look at. Desiree looked down at herself and saw nothing wrong. She then looked at Nina, who was wearing short shorts and a belly shirt, and snorted. "I should be asking you the same question. Look at you. Nya? What is wrong with what I am wearing?" Nina looked down at herself and felt her clothes were quite normal. Never mind. Let's just say we are both dressing normally. Desiree decided to leave it at that. The word dressing did not really fit her since she had no clothes on at all, and just scales. She had gotten so used to not wearing clothes that she now felt stuffy even when wearing armor. So when she was not in a dungeon, she would not wear anything. Okay. Nina pursed her lips and realized this goddess was quite easy to get along with. She hoped to become friends with her goddess. How far are we from your village? About 15 minutes out. If you had kept running forward, you would have run into it. But I must warn you. There are toblins in my village. They are not the same as goblins and live normal lives like you and I. Also, they are a higher level than you, and might beat you up if you start anything with them, Desiree warned. That's fine. I have met a few before. They are much different than goblins, Nina replied. She was never one to look down on other races, except those that meant her harm. By the way, how is it that you are always producing cold air? Nina was very curious about this. She had to stand a few feet away so that she would not freeze to death. I am not sure. I started to produce cold air after I evolved. I can retract it when I need to, but it takes a lot of concentration. Luckily, it only affects the area around me by about 10 feet at the moment. Desiree was glad she did not have a significant other or a child. She would not be able to touch them. I see. Nina had a lot of questions as the two walked, and the more she asked and the more answers she got in return, the more she came to like speaking with Desiree. She had many friends in her village, but she had never met anyone so easy to talk to like Desiree was. She just seemed calm and relaxed, while at the same time, she could get excited and be sarcastic. She was very easy to get along with, and Nina could tell that Desiree was one who did not hide her emotions. Boss! The two had arrived at the gate, and as per usual, Oimtera was pouncing toward his boss at full speed. He came to a skidding halt before bowing toward Desiree, and then turning to Nina. A catkin? That is right. Nina rolled her eyes. Wasn't it quite obvious that she was a catkin? Why did this pigman decide to ask if she was a catkin, as if it was a question or not? She figured her tail and ears would give it away. Oimtera, this is Nina. I just met up with her. She was being chased by orcs. She will be staying here for the time being. Desiree introduced the cat girl at her side. Ah! Glad you are okay. Oimtera smiled as he continued. Our village is still small, but thanks to Boss, all of us have been able to level up and get closer and closer to our first evolution. We are preparing for when the merger finishes. At that time, war will most likely break out between the races. Nina frowned when she heard this. Her race was a warrior race, and the higher-level catkin would definitely be told to go to the front lines. She bit her lip and wanted to ask Desiree what she planned to do when the time came, but when she turned, she saw that her goddess was busy eating a meat skewer that came out of nowhere. She did not see Juna at the side, quietly standing there serving Desiree as if she was a little maid. Desiree licked her lips and nodded her head in approval. That was very good, Juna. Your cooking skills have gotten much better. I learned this from you. Juna blushed. She then peeked a look at Nina, who had just noticed her. Miss Nina, it is a pleasure to meet you. Likewise. Nina felt strange. She had always thought toblins were uncivilized, like goblins, but here was a female toblin cooking meat and receiving praise from her goddess. Nina, we are building quite a few spare homes, but none of them are fully ready yet. I will have you stay with me for the time being. As for what happens when the merger completes, I do not know. But rest assured I will not be attacking anyone unless they attack this village first. Desiree did not plan to play around. She would not attack others, but if they attacked her she would not hesitate to defend her new home. She planned to build a kingdom. She would have no other choice but to do so since she had to gain followers. Her realm advance requirements were a little insane, but she was determined to complete them. She wanted to know what it meant to break through the mortal realm and into whatever realm thereafter. Boss, I do not think it is safe to have a newcomer staying with you. Have Nina stay with Juno. Ointera did not trust new people. They had to earn his trust. He was also very protective of his boss. He owed her a life debt. She was his empress, his boss. He would not allow others to do any harm to her. It's fine. If she can't even defeat 2 small orcs, how can she harm me in my sleep? My entire body is as tough as a mountain. Desiree waved off Ointera's warning. She found her skin was quite tough. She had tried to cut into it quite a few times, but was unsuccessful. Boss. Ointera glared at Nina. He raised his hand and pointed at her. If you dare try to harm Boss, I will skin you alive. Desiree rolled her eyes. Nina, ignore him. He is just overprotective. You would think he was in love with me, or something with how he acts. Of course, I love you, boss. Ointera said righteously. So does Juna and everyone else. You have given us new meaning in life. It's our duty to protect you. Right. Instead of getting mad, Nina suddenly clapped her hands. We should look after our goddess. So you do understand. Ointera's attitude quickly changed. He began chatting non-stop with Nina about Desiree. Desiree sighed. When Ointera got like this, he would never stop. What made things worse was Juna also joined in, and now 3 of them were standing there praising her left and right. Did I somehow start a cult? Desiree shook her head and walked away. She did not want to stand there listening to them. She figured Ointera or Juna would lead Nina to her hut later. I guess I should see if there are any new skills I can get. Desiree walked over to the main campfire and sat down. She opened her status menu to look at her current situation. Name, Desiree Harris Race, Ice Dragon Goddess, current realm mortal age, 18 level, 20 monster rank, E-realm advance requirements. Reach level 50. Kill 1,000 enemies. Raise your affinity with ice to 70%. Create a domain with 10,000 followers. Evolution requirements. Reach level 100. Kill 2 demigods. Complete 3 level 100 dungeons. Solo HP 4,567. MP 3,289. 3,218. Immunity AVL Max. Appraisal 32 First Aid. Dolphin Skin. Dolphin Skin. Dolphin 2. Spark. VFL1 Cleanse. OF01 Drink. VL1 Dick. 1 Dick. 1L1 Digek. Healing Snow. Earlier 5. Partial Transformation. 3. Hunting. LVL3. Gay Foraging. LVL3 Cooking. Hunting Trick Cooking. Dave beat. She had yet to level up once since her evolution, but she did have 41 skill points. Let's see what skills I have access to now. She hit the skill shot button and began scrolling through the list. It was now split into multiple different categories. Normal skills, professions, and god skills. A distressed ice fairy When Desiree opened her skill list, she saw a lot of new skills, most of which cost a lot of points to get. Most of these new regular skills cost over 100 skill points. The goddess skills are not even something I can touch at this time. From what I can see of the list that is there, the cheapest one is 1,000 skill points. Desiree had some hope of getting a cheap goddess skill, but it seems she would not be able to get any of them today. But 2 skills did catch her eye, both of which cost 20 skill points each. The first one was Summon Ice Elemental. As the name implies, it summons an ice elemental at your side. It will follow your every command. At levels 1 through 5, you can only summon 1, but at level 6, you can summon 2. She figured having an extra addition to her fighting prowess would be nice. The second skill that caught her eye was called Prison of Absolute Cold. It was a barrier-type skill. It could enclose an area within it, with a barrier that, if someone tried to walk through it, they would be instantly frozen. While it did need 10 mana per 10-foot radius to maintain, it was worth it if she could use it to cover the entire village in case of an attack. Although she knew she would need to quickly raise her level in order to be able to do so, but to have the skill now, even if she could only wrap everyone in it to protect them, it would be fine. That should do it. Desiree nodded her head in satisfaction. The second skill she chose was quite overpowered. If she had the ability to keep it up without concern about her mana disappearing, it would be a massive trump card in defending against enemy attacks. It would also be helpful in dungeons as well. Let's try the summon skill, I guess. Desiree wondered just what kind of ice elemental would be summoned. She took a deep breath before reaching her hand out and calling out the skill, Summon Ice Elemental. A bluish glow came from the palm of her hand. An icy cold air began to flow out. This cold air began to twist and turn, forming a small pocket of frozen air that began to condense. It spun around in a circle, creating a sphere-like shape that began to give off a faint glow at its center. Slowly, this glow grew bigger and bigger. The wind around Desiree began to pick up, causing her snow-white hair to flutter. Everyone who sensed the strangeness in the air turned to look at Desiree. What shocked them was the small figure starting to form in the air in front of their boss. It was humanoid in shape, but small. The figure was curled up in the fetal position and was slightly transparent, but slowly, it was starting to become more opaque by the second. Desiree watched as her mana was draining at a rapid rate. She had over 3,000 mana, and now it was down to 1,000. This was a huge drop with a single spell cast. She couldn't help but wonder just how much mana this spell took, since it did not say. System notification, Goddess line detected, normal summoning, changed to Goddess summoning. All summons by those of the Goddess line are permanent and will level up as the skill itself levels. As the system message popped up, Desiree noticed that her mana suddenly dropped to 1. The figure before her had fully formed. It was a small girl with ice blue butterfly-looking wings on her back. She had 2 horns on her head and a thin ice blue tail. Her little face was quite cute as well. She looked like a human but with extra features. On her body was an ice blue dress that went down to her knees. Her ice blue hair flowed down to her feet and even a little past them. The figure slowly floated over to Desiree's hand and landed in her palm. Only then did the thin layer of ice around the figure burst. Desiree looked excitedly at the little figure and found her to be very cute. She could see her little chest rising and falling, so she knew it was alive. After a few seconds, the figure suddenly rolled over on her back and stretched her little arms up over her head. Desiree really could not help but laugh when she saw this. It was too cute. The figure slowly opened her eyes. She blinked a few times before rubbing them gently. She looked around in a confused state before turning to look at Desiree. Who are you? Where am I? Desiree was a bit confused. She could tell right off the bat that this small girl was not something she had created. My name is Desiree. I summoned you. What? Why? I was living a life of luxury on top of that snow lotus. The figure suddenly stood up and pointed at Desiree. Quickly send me back now. I can't. Desiree really felt bad. She never meant to kidnap anyone. What? Wait. What is this? The figure realized something was very wrong. This connection, no way. Master-slave, no. Man, why? Desiree looked at the very distressed fairy in front of her and scratched her head. This was completely not what she had been expecting at all. I'm sorry? You're sorry. You summoned me here and turned me into a slave and say you are sorry. What good do sorries do? The figure cried out. She sat in Desiree's hand and started bawling. Desiree looked at the others for help, but they all shook their heads. They had no idea what to do either. They had never even seen summoning magic before. Desiree sighed as she reached out with her other hand and patted the top of the distressed fairy's head. I can't send you back, but I can promise never to make you do anything you do not want to do. I do not know what this master-servant thing is, since my spell never said anything about such a thing. But if you are willing, you can stay by my side, and I will make sure you live a good life. The figure looked up at Desiree and wiped the tears from her eyes. This was what she was most afraid of. She did not want to do things that went against her own morals. If you promise me not to abuse your control over me, then fine. Of course. I was only looking for a companion to fight by my side. I never imagined things would end up this way. But, Desiree held out her other hand. Ice began to form in the air, turning into a large rose. I do not know what a snow lotus looks like, but what about an ice rose? The figure's eyes lit up as she flew up from Desiree's hand and landed on the ice rose. When she did, she suddenly realized something. She tapped her foot off the ice a few times before flying up and over to the top of Desiree's head, where she landed and took a few steps. After a short moment of indecisiveness, she sat down on top of her new master's head. This place was much colder than the ice rose. It suited her much better and was softer. I will live here. As for the companion thing, I will agree to it. Desiree rubbed her nose. It seemed her ice rose was no good, but when she heard the last part of what the figure said, she smiled and nodded slightly. Then I will be counting on you to watch my back. Not like I have a choice. I am bound to you, which means if you die, so do I, the figure replied before flying off Desiree's head and hovering in front of her. My name is Haina, Master. What is your name? My name is Desiree. You can call me Dessa or Boss like the others. It's a pleasure to meet you, Haina. Desiree smiled. She really found Hina very cute. But, Haina, I have a question. Question? Hina was a bit confused. She did not think her master would ask her a question all of a sudden. Yes, I was supposed to summon an ice elemental. So I am confused why a fairy showed up. Desiree was very confused about this. She thought it would be some kind of ice golem of sorts, but here was a fairy gently flapping her wings in front of her face. An ice elemental? Well, that sounds about right. But you see, I am a high elemental. High elementals and above have these kinds of forms, or one like your own. Anything below that would be more of a golem type, Hina replied. Now that she thought about it, she had never heard of a high elemental being summoned before. Normally, such elementals were too powerful for anyone to summon them. This thought made her very curious about this new master of hers. I see. That would explain it then. I do hope we can get along well together. Desiree knew she was not strong enough to summon some kind of high elemental, which meant that this was due to the system and the fact that she had become some kind of a goddess. Me as well, Hina replied with a real smile for once. She floated up and landed in Desiree's hair and snuggled into it. The coldness that she felt suited her just fine. This was much better than that snow lotus. With things now settled, everyone gathered together around the fire. Desiree could feel the warmth of the fire, but it did not actually warm her up. It was just a sensation of knowing it was there. This was because of how cold her body was. Goddess, boss. Nina sat down next to Desiree, but quickly moved a few steps away. She found it weird. Earlier Desiree had grabbed her hand, and she did not feel any cold at all, but now she could hardly sit a few feet beside her without feeling ice cold. What are your plans from here on out? We are finishing a few things up, then we will be exploring the dungeon we checked out not long ago. I want to level up and gather more resources. The entire village needs to be equipped with better equipment as well. There is a lot to do, Desiree sighed. She wondered when she would be able to see her father and friends again. She could already tell the road ahead was going to be a long one. Nah? This is amazing. Nina cried out. The houses were now done, and the biggest one of them all was Desiree's Ointera, said since she was the boss she had to have a house that matched. Isn't it too big? Desiree wrinkled her brow. The house was 3 stories tall. It had so many rooms, but it was just her and Nina at this time. And Nina might even be taking a house of her own. This was still up in the air. It seems just right for a temporary house. Boss, when we have more materials, we will build you a large palace, Ointera announced. This was followed by everyone nodding their heads. I don't need a palace. Desiree wished they would listen to her. She kept telling them she only wanted a small house. She would have to take care of this place. Boss. We captured a few humans. A Toblin who was on guard came running over and announced. Humans? Desiree wrinkled her brow. She did not know if they were the other world humans or humans from her world. She had to be careful with how she handled this. She sighed and said, Ointera, Nina, follow me. After saying this, she told the guard to lead the way. Yes, boss. The Toblin guard smiled and quickly led the way. He was happy to have his boss talk to him. It was an unspoken rule in the village that their boss was to be admired from afar. She was beautiful, wise, kind, and gentle to those around her. She was willing to share all the good things with them without a second thought. She was truly their goddess. Of course, this was a rule that did not just apply to men but also to women. Desiree walked over to the newly built guardhouse to see 10 humans all tied up using thick vines. They looked quite haggard. According to appraisal, they were also low level, which meant they were from her world from what she could see. Seeing Desiree and Nina walk over, two people who had more human features, the humans who were all sitting on the floor looked a little relieved. Desiree stood in the front and looked at them all before asking, "Who is the leader?" "I am," an older man replied. He looked up at Desiree and said, "We originally came here to ask for help. We have been hungry for days. We did not expect to be captured on the spot." "Oh?" Desiree looked at the Toblin guard, who nodded his head and said, "In our world, humans would attack demi-humans no matter what. So we were taking precautions. Since we wished to build a place for all, we did not go too far. This is why we did not kill them, and instead captured them." "I understand." Desiree nodded. This was the right thing to do. She turned her attention back to the humans. "As you heard, the humans of their world are very violent towards the demi-races. This is why you were captured. I can see you all have reached level 3. This is not bad for people roaming about like nomads." "I see. I can see now why you captured us like this. But I promise we mean your people no ill will. We are just on the verge of starving to death. This is the first settlement we have seen since the apocalypse happened," the old man replied. "My name is David. I am an ex-general in the military. Although long retired, these are the few survivors I have picked up while trying to find a place safe to settle down in." "I see. Well, we can take you in. But you will need to build your trust with us. But let me warn you, while we can give you a week of rest and a chance to regain your strength, you will all need to start working after that. Those who do not work do not get fed." Desiree looked at the people who all had sunken cheeks. She could tell they had not eaten for many days now. "This is what should be done. We will do as you ask, as long as we have a place to settle." David smiled. He never thought the strange girl in front of him would be so willing to allow them to stay. Of course, Desiree would not have let them stay if every one of her people were not of a high level. "Good, but let me warn you, if you dare to harm any of my people, the Toblins, the Pigmen, myself, or Nina, I will kill you myself," Desiree said coldly. She had never killed a human before, but since becoming a dragon girl, her way of thinking had long changed. She did not feel bad about killing anything. "We understand. If such a thing does happen, please dish out punishment," David quickly agreed. "If someone ever did such a thing, he would kill them himself. Then follow him. He will give you all some food to eat. A stew would be easier on the stomach. Just remember to eat slowly. There is plenty of food here, so you will not starve no matter what. But do not bite the hand that feeds you. The first time you betray my trust, I will hunt you down to the ends of the earth." After giving this last warning, Desiree turned and left with Untira and Nina. She did not care about anything else. She hoped the humans here could become good assets to her and would work well with the other races. This would allow humans and demi-humans to live together in harmony. A week later, things had settled down. The new wall construction was underway, and the houses were being built one after the other. Nina decided to just stay living with Desiree, and somehow suddenly became her maid. Desiree, who was currently sitting on a stool, was getting her back washed by Nina. It was not an easy task since Nina had to keep soaking the towel in hot water every few seconds to keep it from freezing. She was even wearing more clothes than normal to keep herself warm. "Boss, what are your plans going forward?" Nina asked out of curiosity. Things were settling down. Even the humans were pitching in and doing what they could to help out. They even rigged up this thing called electricity in the village using things from this world. Since things are going smoothly, I plan to bring a few people and clear the new dungeon so we can mine night stones and other ores. We need people to be around level 20 or above to even make any use of the dungeon, and only then will we be able to truly farm for ores there. Desiree had not forgotten about the precious ores she so needed that might be hidden in the dungeon. "Can I go with you?" Nina asked. Her eyes glowed with excitement. It never dawned on her that the whole dungeon might be very dangerous. "If you want, but you will need to stay in the back. These are zombies, and are all level 17 to 25 elites." Desiree did not know the exact levels of the dungeon, but she at least had a good understanding of what the levels were. "Yay! Thanks, boss." Nina always wished to evolve. "No problem." Desiree smiled and poked Heine, who was sitting in her lap sleeping. Every time she poked the little fairy's cheek, she would wave her hand and then rub her nose without waking up. She had noticed that Hina would not leave her side even for a second. She would always be tucked away in her hair, or would be sitting on her shoulder when things were going on. She was always watching her surroundings as if she were Desiree's personal guard. After washing up, Desiree decided to go have a meeting with Ointera and Juna. Of course, Nina would follow, and so would Heine. When Desiree thought about the two names between the fairy and the cat girl, she chuckled since they rhymed. She went to the front door of her new mansion and asked the pigman on guard to send for Ointera and Juna before heading to the meeting room to wait for the two. While she waited, Nina poured her some tea made from magifern, which was supposed to warm the body. Desiree had no idea if it worked or not, but she did know the tea tasted good. About 5 minutes later, the door to the meeting room burst open, and Juna and Ointera rushed in shouting, "Boss!" The two even stopped to look at one another, and glared at each other before snorting and sitting down at the table. Desiree chuckled as she said, "We will be going on another dungeon dive. We need to get everyone to their next evolution, as well as make it so that we can finally mine the dungeon itself. I also plan to have 2 people take the humans to the low-level dungeon. I want them to quickly level up. This run alone should push both of you past level 20. When you reach the evolution stage, let me know, and we will backtrack and find a safe room to let you evolve in. This goes for everyone who comes with us. One dungeon run should net us all at least 4 to 5 levels. Maybe even more. Boss, will we be able to clear this dungeon as well?" Ointera asked. He was kind of excited to get another dungeon completion under his belt. "I am not sure. Maybe when all of us are closer to the max level, we can take on the boss. But in order to not risk it, we will keep farming until we are at a much higher level than the boss. This will give us a level advantage. I know we jumped right in on the other boss, but by the time we actually fought it, we were close to the boss's level already. We should not take too many risks. After all, if you die, that is it." Desara wanted to be careful this time around. She knew that as they leveled, the dungeons they would encounter would be even more challenging than the last. The bosses will also become harder and harder. She did not wish to lose anyone. "Then let's farm and map out the dungeon." Juna was okay with this. Killing elites was not bad either. They could easily get quite a bit of XP from elites and level up much quicker than hunting monsters outside. This was proven in the last dungeon. Yes, That is my plan. You can each choose 2 people from your side to come. Nina will be coming as well. However, until she is higher level, she will only be sitting back. We can't have her fighting up front until she has gotten her level up, so go choose a few people and set up the humans with dungeon guides for the lower level dungeon, and get them to at least level 12 by the end of the week. Desiree dismissed the 2 and leaned back in her chair. She couldn't wait to level up again. She needed to be much stronger. Yuck. Desiree frowned as she looked at her hands. She now wished she had made herself a weapon. In front of her were 3 undead zombies. But because they were undead, their skin and the juices inside all splattered when she attacked just now. Boss, you should have made a weapon for yourself as well. Ointera felt bad. His boss was used to using her claws, but these kinds of monsters were not something you would really want on your hands. It's fine. I will make one in a second. But before that, cleanse. Desiree used cleanse on herself to get rid of the goo that was sticking to her hands. Only when it was gone did she feel much better. Blood and guts were fine for her, but when it came to something rotting, she couldn't help but feel disgusted. Its edge was thinner than a razor's, and its durability was on par with steel. With her ice manipulation skill, she could do a lot without much effort. She looked at the ice blade in her hand and felt that maybe this was a bit of a cheat skill now that she was thinking about it. Ice was strong to begin with, so if you were to allow someone to manipulate it at will, it was just asking to make legendary weapons out of thin air. After some thought, Desiree decided to make something she had seen before that she thought would be even cooler than a simple sword. In seconds, the sword in her hand extended a little and became wider. It had the same shape as a certain game character's sword from a long-running series of video games. More specifically, the number 7 in the series. She also made an ice bow as well, since it would be easier to snipe the zombies from afar and pull one at a time. This was the only good thing about this dungeon. The zombies were easy to pull, so you would not need to fear pulling too many at once as long as you did not aggro them with loud noises. Boss, your sword is huge. Ointera looked on with a bit of envy. He wanted to touch it, but he knew better. The last time he tried to touch one of Desiree's ice weapons, he almost lost his arm. Don't be jealous just because mine is bigger than yours. Desiree gave Ointera a wink before walking down the tunnel. Juna and Nina both covered their mouths and giggled at the side while Ointera's face turned red. He did not dare say a word as he quietly followed behind Desiree. It happened about a week ago. He was busy working on something and only had a pair of shorts on. He was doused with cold water by one of his friends, which caused his shorts to fall off, revealing his manhood to everyone. Because of the cold water, his manhood had retreated, and because of this, he was laughed at by everyone. What made it worse was that his boss even turned her head and giggled as well. He tried to explain things, but this only made everyone laugh harder. The group continued through the dungeon. The zombies were only dropping some coins here and there, or some cloth. Nothing that was really worth writing home about. Desiree was a little disappointed, but there was nothing she could do about what dropped in the dungeon. With her new sword, she was easily able to cleave the heads off the zombies cleanly, making their killing and leveling much quicker. She even reached level 22 within a few hours. It was about the 3rd hour in when Ointera suddenly announced he hit level 20. Boss! I hit level 20. I can evolve. Congratulations. Desiree was very happy. Evolutions gave a huge boost in power. This meant he would now be able to fight more easily and help defend the village more easily as well. Alright, let's head back to a safe room. Everyone is on guard duty. Once Ointera evolves, we will continue on with clearing the dungeon. Everyone nodded and quickly hurried back to a large room that they could easily defend if needed. One would think that they would leave the dungeon to let Ointera evolve, but if they did, the dungeon itself would reset. And it was actually safer to evolve in a dungeon, where things were more under your control than it was to evolve outside of it, where anything could happen at any time. When they set up camp, Ointera sat in the corner of the room and readied himself for his evolution. He had never heard of his kind evolving before, so he was nervous. He hoped his evolution would not turn out to be something like an orc. Boss, if I somehow evolve into an orc, please kill me right away. Don't worry, no matter what happens, I will be sure to roast you on the grill. Desiree replied teasingly. Ointera couldn't help but smile. He was truly grateful to this boss of his. He could not be where he is today without her assistance. No matter what, boss, my life will always be yours. All right, stop acting all weird. Hit the button to evolve. Desiree hated it when he got all corny on her. Ointera smiled and pressed the button. He was quickly engulfed in a whirlwind of mana. Multiple evolutions. Desiree sat down in front of the mana vortex, in front of her, on a bench made of ice. She crossed her legs up under her and stared at the swirling mana, wondering just what Ointera would look like after he had evolved. Desa, Hina called out while pulling on one of Desiree's horns. What's wrong, Hina? Desiree reached up with her hand and let Hina climb on top of it before bringing it to the front of her face, so they could see each other. You should fight the boss. Hina had been thinking about it. Her new master was much stronger than she thought. Hina could tell. To instantly kill a bunch of level 20 to 25 elites was already proof that she could solo this dungeon without help. Her actual strength did not match her level. I am not sure I can. Desiree wanted to shake her head but was quickly cut off by Hina. These are no master. You have strength that is beyond this dungeon. You are belittling yourself too much. You even have many comrades here who can easily assist you. The Juna girl even told me you basically soloed the first dungeon boss you faced without any issues. You just need to have more confidence. I'd say you could at least fight bosses 10, no, 30 levels above your current level without issue. Look how smoothly you have been pushing through this dungeon. How many of the monsters have the rest of your team killed? Almost all of them were killed instantly by you. Hina's words made the rest of the group nod. Hina did not lie. Desiree was instantly killing the elites without much effort. With such skill, the boss itself should be a walk in the park. Juna walked over and sat down not far from Desiree and added, "We all have seen how strong you are. You can easily defeat the boss alone. While we cannot do much on our own, I think that most of us will also evolve before we even reach the boss room. The boss will also jump out levels a few times as well. I know you are worried about our safety, but we must all take risks. Even if one of us dies, we will not blame you. Eventually, we will lose someone in a dungeon or war in the future. So we should practice now instead of playing it safely. The world around us is unforgiving. You cannot shelter us all the time." Juna's words made sense to Desiree. It also opened her eyes and made her realize that she had been sheltering them. She was always worried about one of them dying and taking the brunt of everything on her own. She let out a sigh before nodding her head. All right. We will fight the boss. Yay! Hina shouted happily. In truth, she just wanted to be of some use. This entire time, she had not needed to make a move, nor did Desiree ask her to. She wanted to show her new master that she could be of use. She had only known Desiree for a short time, but she really liked this girl, mainly due to the consistent ice-cold air that came off her body, but also because she was very caring and always watching out for her. I think he's done. She was kind of jealous. While she had jumped quite a few levels since the start of the dungeon, she did not think she would hit level 20 by the end. She was only level 15 at the moment. Desiree and the rest all looked at the swirling mana as it began to dissipate, revealing what looked like a young man in the nude, standing there. He had 2 pink ears on top of his head that were adorned by his pink hair. His face was quite handsome, along with his muscular body that would make any girl swoon. Even the member between his legs seemed to have gotten a level up. On his backside was a curly pink tail that looked like a spring. He looked much different from any orc. Desiree looked Ointera up and down and nodded her head in appreciation. While he was indeed good-looking, she still did not feel much. For some reason, looking at Ointera reminded her of the mysterious man she saw in her first dungeon. He had said they would meet again, but she really wondered if that was true or not. Oh, I look human. Ointera suddenly shouted out. Can you put some clothes on? We do not want to go blind. Juna yelled out. Her grey cheeks turned a ting darker as she blushed. She wondered why this damn pigman had to turn out so handsome. Ah. Ointera only just now realized he was naked. He quickly covered himself up and began going through his inventory to look for his armor. He quickly equipped it and let out a sigh of relief. With a shy smile, he looked around and scratched his head as he said, Haha, sorry about that. It's fine, Desiree replied without real much care. Tell us what race you are now. That is just it. I never heard of this race before. I am now what is called a devil hog, Ointera replied. He had never heard of his race evolving, so this was a first for him. His health and mana shot through the roof, and he even got 2 new racial skills. What are your stats like, and what skills did you get? Desiree wanted to get a good understanding of this new race, Devil Hog. My health is 3,120, and my mana is at 1567. As for skills, they are all the same as before, except I now have 2 new ones. Devil Hog Strength and Fiery Fists. Both are at level 1, Ointera explained. Desiree was surprised that he got strength buffs and a fists skill. But just from the sound of his race, it seemed he was born to beat people up. She couldn't help but think of a biker gang when she heard his race name. Okay, we will test it out. In the next few fights, you will be in charge of killing the zombies. Let's see just how powerful you have become. Desiree wanted to test Ointera out. She had to know if all evolutions gave a huge spike in ability. Don't worry, boss. I will do my best. Ointera really wanted to see how strong he had gotten as well. The group continued on, and quickly found a single zombie shuffling around. It was a level 22 zombie, which meant they were probably getting closer to the boss's room. Ointera ran up without unsheathing his sword and punched out. His speed was much faster than before, and as his fist landed on the zombie skull, it suddenly exploded all over the place, sending chunks of flesh and brain matter all over the place. Ointera stood there in a daze. He instantly killed an elite zombie. Not bad. Desiree was also stunned. She looked at Ointera, who kept looking at his fists and then back at the cloth item drop before looking back at his fists. He was too shocked at his own strength. Seems I can't pick on him anymore. Juna pursed her lips. She couldn't wait to evolve as well so she could beat the damn pig brains up. No, you can. I noticed that Ointera has a soft spot for you, Juna. Desiree could see that the two got along well, and Ointera was always following Juna's whims. She did not know if different species could form families or not, but she did hope the two could get together at some point. Juna blushed. But she wondered, would that soft spot still continue even if she evolved? What if her evolution made her even worse looking than she was now? Many thoughts were bouncing through her mind. She did not know what her evolved form would look like, and it scared her. We will need to wait and see. I do not think Ointera cares about looks. Desiree patted Juna on the head. She then used cleanse on Ointera since he was bouncing back towards them with an excited look on his face. She knew if she did not do it now, they would all need to be cleansed. With the way he liked to flail his arms about when he talked, he would spray gook all over them. Boss, did you see? Ointera asked excitedly. Yep. I saw you blast a zombie's head into millions of pieces. Congratulations, you learned how to splat brains. How is it? Did you get the brain splatting skill? Desiree asked teasingly. Boss, there is no... Wait, I did. Ointera was shocked. He really did get a skill called brain splatting. Everyone was quiet, including Desiree. She had just been teasing Ointera and was not serious, and now a skill really appeared. Everyone else felt the same way. They were shocked. They too knew that their boss was just teasing Ointera, but it actually came true. This brought their respect for Desiree to another level. Desiree was at a loss as to what to say. She had no words. It seems there is such a skill. Congrats. Desiree smiled awkwardly. Ointera, who had no sense of the mood in the room, smiled happily and thanked Desiree. With a second powerhouse now in their team, Desiree was more confident in fighting the dungeon boss. The group quickly made their way toward the boss room, but just before getting there, they had to stop because Juna had actually hit level 20 as well. Juna, we will protect you, so evolve in peace. Desiree smiled warmly at Juna, which caused her to blush. She wondered if her boss knew that she was very pretty, and even more pretty when she smiled. Juna snapped out of her daze and nodded. I will start now. Desiree stepped back, and in no time at all, Juna was covered in a vortex of mana. Desiree did the same thing she did for Ointera and sat in front of the vortex. She would protect it, no matter what. Boss, what do you think she will evolve into? Ointera asked. A beauty that you will never get to touch, Desiree replied teasingly. She found it fun to tease Ointera. Ointera blushed after hearing this. He was just asking. Why did he need to get teased? Although he couldn't help but be slightly worried, after all, Juna was a good girl. If she turned out beautiful, would she want someone as silly as him? It was only when this thought came to mind that Ointera suddenly realized he had feelings for the girl. His whole face grew red, causing everyone to wonder just what was going on in his mind. A few hours later, the mana whirlwind around Juna dissipated. Desiree quickly made an ice wall to block everyone's view as she looked at the gray-skinned beauty on the ground. Juna opened her eyes, blinked a few times, and looked around. She was a bit confused as to why things seemed smaller than before. She looked up at her boss in confusion. "You have become very beautiful, Juna. Here, look." Desiree made an ice mirror for Juna to look into. When she saw herself in the mirror, she couldn't help but burst into tears. She was happy she did not become ugly. Juna gazed at herself in awe. She never thought she could be so beautiful before. "I do not understand it." Desiree smiled and looked at Juna, whose body was not even close to a goblin's anymore. She looked like she could make any man bend to her will. "Whether you understand it or not, you have evolved." "What is your race?" 1 second." Juna quickly opened her menu and looked at her status screen. "Let's see. I became a nymph. I never heard of it before. Nymphs are considered a fae race." Desiree was very knowledgeable about this. "I'm not sure what they are in your world, but in mine, they are mythical creatures." "I see." Juna smiled softly. "Do you think he will like it?" "I do not see why not, but Juna, do not let him get what he wants easily." Desiree wanted to make Ointer work for his right to be with Juna. "Make him work for it. Grow your bond slowly." I also want the stupid pig to work for it." Juna nodded her head and smiled. Her smile was like the sun. If Desiree was not careful, she might fall for Juna instead. "All right, get some clothes on and let everyone see your new form. I am sure they are all worried." Desiree helped Juna up. Juna, who was once shorter than her, was now a head taller than her. Juna quickly put her armor on. When she was ready, Desiree removed the wall of ice and stood next to the newly evolved Juna. "What do you all think?" "So beautiful." "Nia!" Nina was the first to cry out. She ran over and did a few circles around Juna. She was stunned at her evolution. To think Toblins would evolve to become so beautiful. Everyone was praising Juna left and right. The only one who was not saying a word was Ointera, whose eyes were glued to the gray-skinned beauty. Desiree chuckled as she walked over and slapped the frowning devil hog on the back of his head. "Wake up and praise her." "Ah, right. Juna, you look stunning." Ointera blurted out, causing everyone to grin. Nina even pushed Juna forward, so she was standing in front of Ointera. Juna lowered her head shyly, before bringing her foot back and throwing it forward, making strong contact with Ointera's shin. "Who wants your praise?" Ha 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 ha. Desiree let out a loud laugh as she watched Ointera hop around in pain. "Damn, woman. Why are you still the same even after your evolution?" Ointera cried out. "His shin really hurt." "So what? Am I supposed to act differently just because I evolved?" "Hell no. I will still be the same," Juna retorted. She looked at Ointera in disdain before turning her head away with a small smile on her lip. Ointera could only helplessly sigh as he rubbed his shin. Once he felt no more pain, he went over to Desiree to start complaining. "Boss, you need to uphold justice for me. She is so mean to me. When chasing a woman, there will be ups and downs." "This is just one of those downs," Desiree replied and patted him on the back. "Treat her well, and she will come around, I promise." Ointera nodded. He also felt that Juna did like him as well. If he did not have this feeling, he would not be chasing after her. He also had not stated his true intentions to her yet. However, He did know one thing. Even if she had not become beautiful, his attitude toward her would not have changed. Juna was Juna after all. The group progressed through the dungeon and made it to the boss room after another half-day. Juna had new spells that could only be used in outdoor areas. She now had the ability to control plants. Sadly, in a cave dungeon, they were useless. But she did plan to make good use of them and form a natural barrier around the village made of large tree roots. Almost everyone evolved, except 2 people. One was a Toblin, who was of a lower level, and the other was Nina, who was a level away from reaching level 20. The only thing was that while the pigmen all became devil hogs, the Toblins were different. They did not become nymphs like Juna, but something called a horned Trinity Fae. They still had gray skin and got a human form like Juna, but they all got wind-attributed abilities. One spell boosted their speed, while another allowed them to cast blades of invisible wind that could slice through their targets. As they stood in front of the boss's room, Nina pouted. I wanted to evolve too. Don't worry. We will run it again to get you and Tibble the level you need if the boss does not level you up. But I'm pretty sure it will. Desiree did not plan to leave the 2 sitting at level 19. Nina nodded and took a deep breath. She did not think she would get to level 20 so quickly. She had to admit, meeting her goddess was the best thing that had ever happened to her. Everyone rest up. We will head into the boss's room after we rest for a few hours. I am sure you are all hungry as well, but remember one thing. Even if you have evolved, you need to take care of yourself. Do not allow yourself to be killed. All right, let's do this. Desiree pushed the door open, revealing a room filled with bones. Appraisal. Boss, Ghoul Knight level, 25 HP. I will go in first, followed by Ointera. Juna, you are on healing. Although there are no plants around, you can still use your healing spell, but only do so if we get low. Everyone else should know their roles. When I say attack, attack. Desiree created a large ice broadsword in each hand and walked towards the boss with them held out to her side. Hina flew to the top of her head and stood there looking, ready to cast spells at any time. Master, remember, you can easily defeat this boss alone. So do not worry. Face it head on. I know. Thanks, Hina. Desiree knew she needed more confidence, and Hina was helping her change her way of thinking. But she also needed to let her team get some practice in. They had to learn to fight together after all. As soon as Desiree reached the center of the room, the boss finally reacted to her presence. It stood up from its hunched-over position and looked at Desiree with an evil grin. You come to my lair with weapons drawn. It seems you wish to kill me. Let's see if you have the ability to. Desiree was stunned for a moment, because she did not expect this boss to speak. It looked like a humanoid monster. It was grotesque looking, but it was actually able to speak. She only snapped out of her daze when Hina suddenly called out to her. Master, it's attacking. Desiree looked up to see a huge fist in her face. She instinctively raised her right hand and blocked the attack with her sword, causing a loud clanging sound to be heard. The strange thing was that Desiree did not move from where she stood. Her feet were firmly planted on the ground and had not even moved an inch. Even the boss seemed to be confused. He stared at Desiree and yelled out, "Who are you? How do you have such strength?" Just your average dragon girl. Desiree replied without much thought. What is a dragon doing in my lair? The ghoul seemed afraid. Desiree did not know what to make of this. Wasn't a boss supposed to be a boss and just wave its hand and shoot beams from its eyes and mouth? Why was this boss so talkative? Killing you? Desiree replied. She really did not know how to answer a boss ghoul who could talk. She looked back at the others, who all shrugged back at her. They also did not seem to understand what was going on. Then I guess this will be the day a dragon dies by my hands. The boss ghoul let out a roar as he swung his fists over and over at Desiree in a flurry of attacks. The sheer wind pressure made the others all quickly jump back. Ina had to hide behind one of Desiree's horns while holding on for dear life. Desiree, on the other hand, only held up her sword to block the blows one after the other. The sounds of clanging were heard, as if the boss ghoul was ringing a bell and not attacking someone. Even with all the attacks, Desiree still stood in the same spot, as if she was an unmovable wall. She did not feel that the boss ghoul's attacks were all that strong. She sighed and waited for one of its fists to come at her before flipping the sword in her hand as if she were holding a bat, one-handed, and swinging it out. The sword smashed into the fist with a loud bang, followed by a crunching sound as all the bones in the boss's arm shattered into pieces. The boss's health bar instantly dropped by 20% with a single attack. Impossible. The boss did not seem to understand where such a small body got so much strength. It could not let itself be defeated here. It quickly jumped back with one of its arms dangling at its side, before waving its good hand and creating 10 magic circles in front of it. Let's see if you can still act calm facing these. Shadow fiends, large monsters, 2 Desiree tall, suddenly appeared in the room. Desiree could tell that these monsters were this boss's final attack. It seemed she had already driven it into a corner. After all of its mana was gone in a single cast of a spell. She quickly cast appraisal on the new enemies to see what kind of stats they had. Shadow Fiend level, 25 HP, 5000 MP, 0. So they are just melee-style monsters? Oing terra. You guys deal with the ads, I will handle the boss. Desiree decided to let the others deal with these 10 monsters. She knew that the Devil Hog race was very strong, so she was not worried about them. A few punches from them, and these monsters would easily die. Desiree walked past the monsters, which seemed to ignore her. Why this was, Desiree didn't know, but it worked out well for her. She came to stand in front of the boss once more, who seemed to be in a state of confusion. I'm going to kill you now, okay? You! Damn dragons. Who do you think you are? I have ruled this domain for millions of years. I will not fall so easily. The boss ghoul cried out before slamming both its fists down at Desiree. Desiree only held up her hand, catching the attack as it came down on her, and tossed the massive fists to the side before reforming her sword and swinging it down on the wrists of the boss ghoul's arms. A howl of pain rang out through the boss room as 2 thuds were heard. The only weapon the ghoul had was now severed at the wrist. Fear filled the boss ghoul's eyes as it stumbled backward, trying to escape, but sadly, there was nothing but the boss room wall behind him. Desiree tapped her foot off the ground and sprung up, creating a few ice foot holds to get herself to eye level with the boss. This will be your end, Desiree stated before jumping up toward the boss ghoul and spinning her body around. The boss ghoul raised its arms in defense, only for them to be sliced apart once more. This can't be happening. The boss ghoul cried out as it felt a pinch in its neck, and then a strong force slamming into the side of its head. Desiree had sliced right through its neck, and then kicked it in the side of the head to make its head separate from its body. The health bar of the boss ghoul quickly dropped to 0 as the body and head collapsed to the ground. Desiree also landed lightly on the ground in a bit of a daze. She was now realizing what Hina meant. Her strength alone would allow her to solo these dungeons with ease. Hina, thank you for giving me confidence. I would not recognize you as my master if you did not have this little bit of ability. Hina blushed and snuggled into Desiree's hair. I guess I should live up to your expectations then. Desiree smiled and reached up to poke the little fairy, causing her to giggle. The boss's body turned into balls of light, leaving behind many items once more. As per normal, all crafting materials went to Desiree. She did not really care about any of the armor that dropped. She did not even wear any armor anymore. She felt uncomfortable and stuffy when she wore it. With her current strength, she also did not need to worry about being harmed all that much either. For defense, she could always wear a layer of ice as armor, which would serve much better than anything she could make or even get from drops. The others also quickly dispatched the summoned monsters as well. A few extra piles of drops were scattered across the ground. You defeated boss. Ghoul Knight experience points gained. Bonus clear experience points gained. Level up. Level up. Level up. Level up. In the end, Desiree reached level 28 after killing the boss. This dungeon alone allowed her to jump 8 levels. The dungeon was also much bigger than the last, and had many more monsters inside. With a full clear and bonus experience, she was bound to get quite a few levels. Name: Desiree Harris. Race: Ice Dragon Goddess. Current realm: Mortal. Age: 18. Level: 28. Monster rank: E-realm advance requirements: reach level 50. Kill 1000 enemies. Raise your affinity with ice to 70%. Create a domain. With 10,000 followers. Evolution requirements: reach level 100. Kill 2 demigods. Complete 3 level 100 dungeons. Solo HP: 7,698. 7,667, 6,267, 6,267. Elemental immunity: AV max scale, FL 2, first aid, FL 2, 2 film skin, 2 spell, SDL 1 clan, class, BL1, drink, BL1, drink, Dix L1, dice, arrow, 5, 1, dice arrow 5, 5L11 detection or detect 1 8 healing snow, AL5 partial transformation 011 professions. Weapon crafting, AVL3 tree armor crafting, AVL3 hunting, AVL3 beast foraging, foraging sorry. She was getting closer and closer to reaching 10,000 health. This kind of excited her since, to her, this was a lot. Desiree smiled happily as she looked at her stats. Boss, I can evolve now. Nina stood in front of Desiree, feeling slightly nervous. All right. Desiree closed her menu and had Nina sit down in front of her. Tara was going to guard the other member who had just hit level 20 as well. Nina, do not worry about anything. I will watch over you. Okay. Nina nodded before taking a deep breath and hitting the accept button. Her evolution process quickly began. Desiree opened her menu again, looked at her level, and felt something was a little off. She seemed to have gained a lot of levels. Tara, how many levels did you get? Me? I got 2. Tara replied. Desiree furrowed her brow and asked the others. They too only got 2 levels. This told her that she somehow got a huge experience boost. Where it came from, she did not know. She was not going to complain either. In another space, a handsome young man sat staring at the screen in front of him, his eyes locked on to the dragon girl, who was staring at her menu in a puzzled manner. He reached out and gently touched the screen and let out a sigh. Soon, I will be able to see you again, Aria. I have waited for so many life cycles just to be with you again. I cannot do much for you at this time, but I can at least help you grow in power. While what I can do at this time is little, it should be able to help you on your road to regaining your true strength. Another major merger